Okay, I found this mix on Spotify. It's called Horror Music of the Night, Scary Sounds, Halloween Sounds, and Spooky Sound Effects. And I have no idea how safe it is to play this music, but you know what? I'm good either way.
Am I coming around this way?
You can come around that way if you like. It's all clear. It's all clear. Now, as you know, by the way, everybody, hi, welcome. You are here for normally you're here for Fireside Lore, but quite a few people on my stream, and I'm the Tea Monster, by the way. Quite a few people on my stream suggested that for this month I change it up a bit and take Fireside Lore and make it a night where we tell spooky stories and scary stories and all sorts of things. And if you remember my last Fireside Lore, you notice it's a lot smokier. It's because I'm using the wood. I'm using the wood dust. I think we're gonna.
I don't want to throw it away.
No, I don't want to throw it away either. But I've noticed this about the wood dust, Tom. Check this out. Watch what happens. It surges. It surges. It has moments. Like watch.
As long as you don't flick it up into the. Okay.
No. I just. I mean, it's neat, but I mean. I don't know.
It's better than wasting them.
It's better than wasting it. Yeah, it's better than just throwing them away.
I have made myself the largest white Russian known to man.
You made yourself. Did you make yourself a beverage, man?
I made a beverage.
You made yourself a beverage. You mix a mean Caucasian there.
Woo!
Yeah, no, right?
It makes like woo! I'm glad you're not doing that in summer, because that would be a fire. That's how the California wildfire started.
That's how the California wildfire started. Congratulations, we're having a boy.
That's orange. I don't know what that is.
We're having a boy. That's what we're having. If it's orange, we're having a boy. All right. So anyway, hi everybody. If you remember the last Fireside Lore, we had this same problem where we got the fire started, but then it kept ebbing and flowing. But then once it catches, you'll be able to see us. But right now, we're just disembodied voices that you might see in the darkness, which is appropriate for what we're going to do here tonight.
I think it's good we had some fun, because we did a serious amount of adulting today.
We did a heck of an amount of adulting.
We cleaned out the pantry.
Yeah.
We alphabetized our... Apparently, that's what people are doing during the pandemic, is alphabetizing their herbs and spices.
Their herbs and spices, yep.
And unlike the meme I saw where it was like 3 things, we have quite a lot of different spices.
No.
We like to experiment with our foods and our spices and
Giggity.
herbs. So we did our pantry, we cleaned out our refrigerator, which you should do every now and then.
Yeah. We kind of let it slide.
And then I went down, we have like a little, our pantry is very small, so we have a little secondary place downstairs. And so I went down there and I made a notes, which I shared with T, about what's down there. And now I'm like, I forgot about those 2-3 jars of jam that were just sitting down there. It was like, okay, well,
as you do.
If the apocalypse comes, we have plenty of high energy jam to eat.
Yep. We got jam and marmalade, so we're good.
We're good.
We're good, chat. We're all good.
I did throw away some sugar crystals, the kinds you put on cakes that have probably been there.
Oh my God, really?
Probably about 7 years too long, so I threw those out. I did find some fun stuff down there. For example, I found 2 slabs of really dark Ghirardelli chocolate down there.
Really?
Yes, tucked away.
Heck yeah.
So the only rule is, when you take something out of there, make sure you remove it off the list.
Right. Which is fair. Now, if you're wondering what am I sprinkling on the fire to...
Magic fairy dust.
Magic fairy dust. Many Christmases ago, we got... don't worry, we're gonna get to the ghost stories. Don't worry, but spooky, scary stuff, kids.
Yes.
How you doing there?
Let me tell you of the time I cleaned up the refrigerator.
I do not do the bloody dishes.
I found in the back many horrifying things.
We found many horrifying things, Guillermo. How you doing there, Steampunk Rick? So basically, many moons ago, my cousins, very thoughtful, gave Pip and myself for Christmas one year a sampler pack of all these fantastic woods that we could smoke stuff with.
Unfortunately,
What they gave us was wood dust.
yeah. I mean, there's different. There's pellets, there's chips, there's wood dust, and then there's just people that put like
Yeah,
bits of log and
bits of log in there, right?
so they didn't really ask first, and so we ended up with dust.
So we ended up with dust, and it's been sitting in the
Taking
pantry
up a lot of space in our small pantry.
that we cleared out, and we said, you know what? Let's see
burn
what
it.
happens if we burn them instead of just
It
throwing them
smells
away.
nice. It's me, or I can smell.
Oh yeah, I put mesquite on it, so so we're gonna be. That's the problem
We're gonna
too, though,
smoke
Chat. We're
ourselves.
gonna smoke ourselves, basically. We're gonna
My
smoke
one
ourselves.
question in this little endeavor of reading ghost stories is, how are you and I going to see what we're reading?
We have these magical things called telephones.
Well, mine is charging because I spent it
Yes,
going downstairs writing
going
all the
downstairs and
stuff
writing
we
stuff.
have down there.
So what we're doing though is that normally you all see us do fireside lore here, and we usually do stuff from Destiny. Well, this go around, the viewers have spoken, because we also did like a lightning poll for a few hours just to see if people wanted us to do Destiny lore tonight, because it's a great night. It's a great
It is like
night.
I think it was 63.
It's a great night to do
Going
this.
down to 49
Absolutely
or
fantastic.
something.
So we said, okay, well then, what do we want? What do we want?
I want to burn up this wood that we.
Yeah, I know. What do the people want us to do? What do the
peoples
What do
want?
the peoples want? So we asked the Pepples.
Have you said
all
that
the
in
Pepples.
Espanol?
No, I can't. But so basically, the breakdown was this: 24% of the votes coming in said they wanted Destiny lore. 76% said they wanted scary stories, and that's not counting the people on Discord who all said, "Hey, we want scary stories too."
How about this?
What?
¿Cuántos las gentes tenemos? Tienen.
How many votes do we have?
No. ¿Qué?
¿Cuántos qué? How many?
No. I was going to say ¿qué los gentes tienen? What do the people want?
What do the people want? Oh, there she goes. She goes.
I get better once I've had a few
I bet you
sips
do.
of
of your
White Russian.
beverage. So we are going to do some
Blanco
ghost
Rusky.
stories. We are going to tell
Rusky Blanco.
we are going to tell some of our own ghost stories. If we really do not have
I think that's
if we don't have enough light from our phones, then we'll just go on ahead and I'll run in, get a flashlight, and we'll literally read scary stories by flashlight.
Will we do the thing where you hold it under your chin and
Why
go?
not?
We do actually have a flashlight back just hanging by the.
We have options. We have options.
El
We have
refrigerador.
options.
Word for torch.
So we're going to do scary stories tonight. And I think throughout the month of October, if we do a fireside lore, and again, this is one of those things where if you redeem 10,000 golden gears, you will get.
So these aren't counting for
things
these aren't counting for
Tonight,
golden gears.
no. Tonight,
just
no.
a special presentation.
We just wanted to do it because it was really just a fantastic night for it.
to burn wood.
To burn wood and to share spooky stories by the firelight. Now, what's really cool though about the wood dust that we're sprinkling onto the fire,
It sort of glows.
it glows. It actually you'll notice if you look at the logs that are burning, there's actually a little bit of like
Sparkle.
You see like a sparkle. That's not the log. That is the actual wood dust that we have on there.
It's like
Let me give it a few more. I'll give it a few more huffs and puffs.
He'll huff and he'll puff. You know, that's what I should get you for your birthday is this month. We should get you a pair of bellows.
Yeah, I think bellows would be perfect.
And next, this coming week is our 9th anniversary.
You know, bellows is a traditional gift for the 9th anniversary. I bet you didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure it's not, but I'll believe you.
Please do, because a pair of bellows would beat me getting down on here and stoking the fire.
Better than sitting over there and.
I don't see you doing it, do you?
I've got long hair. Do you
Yeah.
want to see me catch fire?
I don't know. That could do great things.
No, that's not happening.
Saving up for the tier 3 sub, that is fine, Panic. Save up for that tier 3 sub. Save up for that. And I have not lost count. I have been keeping track of all the people who have been doing subs and doing subs for St. Jude. I will say this though, real quick. In December, as many of you know, I've been training for a half marathon, and that's happening in 2 weeks. Well, my running partner and I have already found our second half marathon that we're running on December 5th. Our next half marathon will be a half marathon for St. Jude. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think, yeah, see? SKG, South Korean guy, he basically says, catch fire? That's great stream footage right there. But
I'm sure I would get a lot of viral hits.
oh
in
my
that.
God, it would get a
But
fantastic
then
viral
my
hits.
hair would be gone, and you like my hair, so
I do. Okay, so chat, real quick. Let me see if I can shine a light on this. So
I really think you should give me the. I'll go get the.
so there you go. This is tonight's first reading. Tonight's first reading is from this book called Ghosts. It is a collection of ghost stories from Time Life Books. In the early '80s, Vincent Price
Jeez.
was shilling for Time Life Books these series of books called the Enchanted World series, and I said, Mom, Dad, you know, I'm gonna would you mind dipping into my allowance and ordering this for me, because
So how
I
many
couldn't
did you
do
get?
it. I didn't have to keep all of them, but I kept like 5 or 6 of them. I got like 5 or 6 out of the entire
Are
series.
they downstairs? Are they?
Some of them are downstairs. Some of them were not my jive. Like there was one on knights and there was one on fairies, and you know, some of that stuff I was
Did you keep
okay
the
with.
fairy one? I am personally affronted.
But I did keep the one on ghosts. This was the first one they gave you. And to give you an idea how good some of these stories are, let me go on ahead and read you this first one here.
See, that's why I was thinking maybe I could get the.
You want to get the light?
I want to go get the land.
You go get the light. I'll go on ahead and I'll read this as we start. So,
Shining right in my eyes.
oh, well, there you have it. I can
don't
also
mind.
do this. I can
I
also
hold it.
well, the other thing I can do is I can dim the light. This is also good for us in that we're playing around with the format so that we can make sure that when we do this officially with Phil Rossi on board that we're doing it right. So let's see right here. All right. Okay. So this is called The Hooded Congregation. Amid the forest mountains of northern Sweden in centuries past, the long winter nights were crowded with the restless, greedy dead. The living, isolated for months in villages hidden among fir trees, stayed indoors for the most part. They knew the darkness did not belong to them. They knew things could happen outside the safe circle of the hearth that were best not risked or even thought of. This was especially true in the bleak time around the winter solstice, as A Christmas Tale relates. In her cottage on a hillside, a woman was awakened early one Christmas morning by church bells echoing in the air. When the peal ceased, she peered out the window. It was dark, as it would be until almost noon at that time of year, but far below she saw the doors of the village church were thrown open, and its light was streaming out in welcome. Although she could not be sure of the hour, it was clear that Christmas service was about to begin. In some haste, the woman dressed, wrapped herself in her warmest shawl, and taking a lantern to light her way, set out down the hill for the church.
Need to hold it?
Yeah,
See, I
sure.
can
There we go.
knock it
That's
away.
perfect. Okay. None of her neighbors were in view, and nothing broke the enveloping silence except the occasional crackle of ice falling from tree branches and the crunching of the snow underfoot. As she neared the little church, however, she heard snatches of singing borne on the air, and she walked faster, spurred by the thought of warmth and companionship. At the open church door, she set down her lantern and composed her thoughts to suit the joyful day. Within the nave were rows of hooded heads. Her neighbors had been more alert than she, it seemed. Intoning psalms at the head of the congregation was a priest, robed not in the pristine white of this great festival, but in an intermediate gray. He looked up at the woman peering into the church and bent once more to his prayers, so that his face was hidden. She crept up the aisle between the rows of chanting worshippers, searching for a place to sit. Then help came. A gentle hand grasped her wrist, with a soft voice spoke into her ear. "This way, dear one." Her rescuer guided her to the front of the church. The singers seated there shuffled sideways on their bench to make room. But such was their intentness on the hymn that not one looked up or greeted her. She sat down meekly, and her guide sat down beside her. Having settled herself in the pew, the woman turned to thank her helper, but the words died on her lips. The person sitting beside her had thrown back her concealing hood. The woman recognized the face at once, although it was much changed. It was the face of her beloved sister, whom she herself had laid in her coffin that autumn, before the first snowfall. The sister laid a bony hand upon the woman's arm, and the damaged face twisted into an expression that might have been pleading. It was hard to tell, for the head was little more than gleaming bone, still adorned with pasty shreds of flesh. The lipless mouth stretched open to speak, and a gust of odor, a sweet, necrotic scent, tinged with the smell of earth, swept across the living visitor. No sound came from the mouth, but all around the woman eddied the almost toneless chanting of the clustered congregation. She pulled her arm free from the bony clasp and began to inch across the bench. The figure gestured, and the woman found her voice. "You are the dead!" she cried out sharply. At once, as if the spell had broken, the singing stopped, and a profound and listening silence settled upon the congregation. Heads turned towards her, hoods fell back. Shufflings and rustlings began, and whisperings without words. The woman felt a hand on her shoulder and jerked around. Behind her was the gleaming skeleton, and beside it another. All up and down the shadowy rows swayed the figures of the dead, some still partially clothed in flesh she recognized. They were people from the village, or had been not long ago. Here a shoulder blade protruded from the rags of a dress. There wisps of hair clung to a whitened skull. Some of the figures were no more than bone, and these she could not recognize. Some, no doubt dead longest, had faded to almost transparent shadows. The congregation began to move, drifting in a blind and stumbling sort of way towards the living being among them, hands cupped to ears or outstretched, feeling the air. Her sister's voice sounded again close by. "They have heard you. Run before they find you, for they will have you with them if they can. They hunger for fresh company." And the woman rose, trembling to her feet. She was as quiet as she could be, but each skull turned at once in her direction, and bony fingers pointed. She edged off the bench and stepped into the aisle. The ragged figures, clutching at one another, twittering and clicking their teeth, stretching their faces in gleaming grins, began to close in. Stepping as lightly as she could, she hurried down the aisle, but they swarmed behind her, unerringly following the sound of her footsteps. She ran, smelling the earth smell and the stench of death, and at her back she felt a sharp prodding. A hand grasped her shoulder. She shook it off. Fingers clutched at her shawl as she gained the door, and she slipped from the fabric and leapt out into the cold night air. Behind her, a single howl issued from the church. And that was all. Gibbering with fear, she made for her priest's house, to find him just awake and preparing for Christmas Mass. After she told her the tale, the priest himself, holding his crucifix high before him, led her back to the church. The church was empty and peaceful. The shawl, or what little was left of it, lay near the door. It was torn and clawed, almost beyond recognition.
Ooh.
That's a good story to start with.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good. That's good. That's the thing. These time life books, when they were good, they were amazing. And I'm going to read another one from there. So, did you? Yeah, I take it you've got something. You better have something.
Yeah, shine the light on this.
I'm going to shine the light on that. Oh,
I'm
there
sure
we go.
You can see it very well.
Actually, here we can move it a little closer to the camera, and then I can uplight it. There you go.
Creative indulgences.
This is Pip's collection. Now, what can you tell us about this
The
collection?
collection is. Can you shine the light on here? Because I need to find the right page.
If only you had like a table of contents in there.
I do have a chart.
I wonder whoever suggested that must have been a genius. Must have been a genius.
Which one was it?
Ghost of a Chance?
I think it's Ghost of a Chance. This is also a ghost story, I think. No, it's not that one. No. know.
So okay, well while she's thumbing through this, let me go ahead and talk about this. My wife has a Patreon.
I did have a Patreon.
Oh, you shut it down?
I have shut it down for the most. Okay, so I've got 2 horror stories. 3. Actually, there's 3 horror stories in here.
So
I just
go ahead
realized.
and pick one. Just we're gonna keep it simple.
Character. Let's see. Which one shall I pick? Well, they're all about the same length. Now that I see.
We're not worried about.
I'm not going to do Holy Bodies because that is actually almost a bit like.
Oh really? Like the one I just read?
It is a bit like it. Do you want to hear it? Maybe we should do a theme.
What about the? It's about like a congregation.
Yeah.
No, change it up. Change it up.
Change it up. Okay, in that case, I will do Ghost of a Chance because
that is also a ghost story.
there's also yes, it's a ghost story.
Okay.
And it's about writers, about a writer
Okay.
who's a bit of a plonker. So
Oh, perfect. So wait. So but before we start this, the question is, what can you tell us about something about the creative indulgences? Where it started
I
from, all
created
that?
this when I was running my Patreon, and it was I gave people different choices about what I would write every month, and I wrote them, which was kind of fun. It was a way of doing different things that I hadn't done before. So I don't do a lot of horror, but I had fun doing these 3, and they were. I did horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I would say the majority of them are probably fantasy, a couple of science fiction, and a couple of horror. This is available. I did an audio book of this. It's also available in print and ebook. If you're interested, you can find it, I'm sure, by looking up Philippa Valentine, Creative Indulgences.
Amazon.com.
Amazon.com. Kobo, Nook, it's everywhere that you can possibly find it.
Audible.
Audible, yes, it's definitely on Audible.
I'm telling you what, chat. She has been married to me for nearly 10 years, and she still hasn't quite figured out how to promote herself.
I was just watching you, see if you didn't catch fire. Right, now do your proper job and shine the light on this.
All right.
A Ghost of a Chance. No, hold on, wrong one. It's actually called Character Assassin. Ghost of a Chance. You'd think that the one that says A Ghost of a Chance, is actually not a ghost story. So give me the pages again. Here we go. It's actually called Character Assassin. Oh, Lord.
Positive, right?
Shut up.
Here's the thing, chat. Here's the thing.
I can't see the page numbers.
Here's the thing.
Oh, here we go. It's on page 25. So
did you SKD? Did you really? Because if that's the case, then we have a high bar to
What?
we have a high bar to clear. He said, "I'm so scared I peed my pants." I mean,
well, hopefully you won't pee your pants on this one. This
All
one
right.
involves ghosts and serial killers, so enjoy.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Character Assassin. Harold thought the house was haunted. At least it better damn well be. He'd paid extra for that feature. Rolling up to it in his cab, he felt the thrill of it viscerally enter him. The outside was 2 floors of just the right amount of beaten-up history. The wooden pillars might once have conveyed the perfect southern picture of antebellum refinement, but now they were just faded and peeling. To top it off, both floors had balconies, which his host had assured him looked like hell but were perfectly up to code. "Are you sure this is the right place?" the driver asked, peering over the frames of his glasses. "Could be critters in there." "Oh, the owner keeps it fine on the inside," Harold replied, thrusting forward a fistful of money. "It's meant to be the most haunted place in the Shenandoah Valley, so it needs to look like it, for the tourists." "Uh-huh," the driver said with a twist of his lips, taking the cash and getting out of the car to remove his luggage. "Whatever floats your boat, dude." "You some kind of ghost hunter, then? Would I have seen you on TV?" Harold made a face. Just like the owner of Shaker Hill, he worked hard to give off the correct signals as to what he was, but apparently this idiot missed every one. "No," he replied, pulling himself up extra straight. "I am a writer." He would have thought the hand-knitted sweater and corduroy pants would have said that. Oh, it's back to the racetrack.
Maybe. Wow, that's a pickup truck. That was a pickup truck, Chad.
That's odd. And assorted yelling as well.
And
Interesting.
yeah.
He would have thought the hand-knitted
It's
sweater.
Redneck Sunday.
Sunday. We do have. We're in a nice development, but there are some redneck types around. Anyway, he would have thought that the hand-knitted sweater and the corduroy pants would have said that. Considering the fact that it was late fall, the driver should have figured out he wasn't some regular day tripper or YouTuber. The guy didn't look impressed, but Harold wasn't here to make an impression on him. He was here to bang out a best-selling horror novel before his agent threw him to the wolves. Also, this is rumoured to be the hiding place of the Bagman killer. Harold threw that fact out super casually. Naturally, the driver didn't know who that was, so he tried vainly to educate him. The infamous serial killer in the 1920s? He cut off his victims' hands and carried them around his neck in a bag. The driver's head jerked back, but nothing was firing behind those eyes. That's messed up. But inspirational to a real writer, Harold said, turning his back on the frivolities of the regular world. As he hitched his bag up the crumbling steps to the front door, in his other hand he checked his phone. Excellent. No signal at all. No distractions from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. It'll just be him and words and no interference. He hadn't even told his mother where he was going. Still, he took some pictures of the outside for later use. His writing group would lose their minds when they saw how authentic this place was. The door even creaked when he used the key and opened it. Inside was beautiful, though. It looked like some southern planter could have been smoking by the window, a rifle on his lap, waiting for Yankees to ride up. He took an upstairs bedroom, one that looked towards the mountains. Putting his bag on the floor, he went to the window. Perfect. Acres of fall colour, mostly the red of fallen blood. Scarlet Mountain, the locals called it, and he would definitely be putting that into his novel. 1 month out here, and he was bound to have something worthwhile at the end of it. It might have taken all his remaining royalties from the previous book, but damn, this place was going to be worth it. If he ended up living in his parents' basement after that until the check came through, oh well. Down in the kitchen, he found the fridge fully stocked as promised. Pulling out some cheese and soda, he went to find the perfect place to set his laptop up. Part of him had considered bringing his typewriter with him, just for the full experience of being a real writer. But it was a pain in the ass to lug that thing around. The important part was there was no Wi-Fi and no signal for his computer to connect to. Down in the kitchen, he finally decided the living room was the best place to set up. An old wooden desk, the kind that had gone dark with age, sat in front of the window, where he could get the same view of the mountains as up in the bedroom. So he sat there, fingers poised over the keyboard, and tried to find the perfect opening sentence. It had to grab readers by the throat, just like the Bagman had. His thumb tapped nervously on the metal just below the keyboard. Damn it, this was not going to happen again. He had found the perfect place, not some coffee shop, not seated in front of the TV playing the crime channel. If he wanted to write about the Bagman, then this was it. Leaning back in his chair, he tried to quiet his spinning brain. No, don't freak out, don't start second-guessing yourself. This isn't like the last time. He went back to basics and pulled out his research. Pages and pages of printed-off blogs and historical sites, plus a few books he'd hunted down on the case. What he really needed was to dive into the Bagman's mindset. Nothing would do that better than looking at pictures of the crime scene. It had taken place in the 20s, so they weren't the best quality, and naturally they weren't black and white, but still better than nothing. The face of the young female victim was a still mask. Somehow, even his mind, which knew all the facts, still didn't quite want to admit it was a person. It was why, Harold supposed, so many people that did find bodies often thought they were mannequins at first, even if stores didn't go around tossing mannequins off freeways and into rivers that much. The human brain just didn't want to accept the reality of a moment sometimes. Yet this reality had happened nearly 100 years ago. This house had been where Jacob Bernard had lived. He had been well off, a landowner and a regular churchgoer. Yet behind closed doors he had beaten his wife and children until they were terrified of him, too terrified to complain about the awful smell coming from the basement. He'd been able to do whatever he wanted to anyone he wanted to for nearly 10 years. One of the few in the area with a motor car, he had gone to other places to bring victims back, putting off discovery for years since police didn't account for that. Harold stared at the picture. the only one of any of Jacob's victims. He had not touched her face, but he had ravaged her body, stripping it back to its component parts as if trying to find something. He neatly laid out her skin and organs, right next to her body. Only the hands were gone, pickled in jars which he kept in the basement of his fine house. What purpose had that served? Jacob had never told anybody why he'd done that, or even why he'd killed the girls. Instead, when surrounded by sheriffs, he'd retreated to the basement and cut off his own right hand. Barricaded down there, he'd bled out by the time the authorities found him. Harold glanced over his shoulder. Maybe he should move down to the basement if he really couldn't find inspiration. His ex-girlfriend had often accused him of having the emotional range of a potato. Maybe that was true, but it made places like this just fine to write in. Too many other people had stupid ideas about ghosts, and though he wrote about ghosts, he didn't really believe in them. Instead, he concentrated on the writing. Starting at the beginning seemed like the best idea. He began to jot down facts about Jacob's childhood. Maybe later on he'd circle back and find a better starting chapter, but this was just getting the juices flowing. The words seemed to come now, and he wrote with a content smirk on his face. This was going to be a wonderful book. People would be shitting themselves to read this. By the time the sun began to set behind the mountains, the tension in his back and fingers told him he was done for the day. When Harold looked up, he wondered at the sudden chill in the house. He thought this place had central heating. Oh, damn, he was going to have to go find a sweater or freeze his ass to this chair. And it had got dark quickly, too. That had to be the change in seasons. The only puddle of light was from the...
Oh.
Who's that?
Very, very well timed, too. Paul Fisher, subscribing at Tier 2, and he's been subscribed for 21 months. You're on a 17-month streak there, Mr. Fisher. Thank you very much for that. Certainly do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Am I still all right to keep reading?
Yeah, that's what we're here for. So real quick, since we have find the place where you stopped.
I found this place where I stopped.
Yeah, found the place where you stopped. Just so you all know, we're doing something a little different tonight. We are trying out the setup for Fireside Lore, the Halloween edition or the October edition. We're reading not only horror that we've written, but also horror from different collections, and we're just giving this a test out. We didn't necessarily have Fireside Lore set up. We just thought it was a perfect night for it. We wanted to give it a shot.
We wanted to burn some wood.
And we wanted to burn some wood and tell spooky stories, and that's what we're doing. And
everyone all right? Everyone hanging in there? Any comments?
And I'm thinking it's going good. So let's get back to this. Is called Character Assassin, and this is written by Pip Ballantyne.
Whoever she is, right?
Whoever she is.
Yeah. The only puddle of light was from the lamp above the desk he'd been working on. Rubbing his arms in a vain attempt to hold back the goose flesh, Harold got up and tried to remember where the kitchen was. Wind outside began to blow, and the house creaked in response. In a strange place, it was hard to find the light switches. You know this story too, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to find the light switches.
Hard to find the light switch.
Stumbling and
Phasmophobia, 10 p.m. Eastern.
On Thursday.
On Thursday.
Stumbling and frantically slapping at the walls, he finally found one that at least illuminated the corridor enough so he didn't break his neck. After finding his way to the kitchen, Harold set about making himself a sandwich, which was his usual fare at home. His mother cooked great meals, but he found all that pretentious cooking, she did way too much trouble. Though when she made cheesecake, he ate that. Since he'd read on the internet, that was the king's favourite food. When he read on the internet that was King's favourite food.
Not the king, but King.
King, Stephen.
Yeah.
When Harold opened the fridge, it actually felt warmer than the house. Maybe he should crawl in there, he thought with a dry chuckle. This house was going from a 5-star rapidly to a 4. Taking in about 12 inches of spiral ham, he placed it on the table and set about finding bread and mustard. He wondered what Jacob ate. Readers loved connecting with killers on a visceral level. Not human flesh, though, he muttered to himself. Jacob had something else in mind, whatever that was. After finding a good serrated knife in the drawer, he set about hacking at the ham, all the time wondering if he could get away with pretending that the bagman had in fact eaten flesh from the bodies. Sure, it wasn't in the documents or anything, but did he really have to stick to the facts all the way? No. If he just hinted at it rather than saying so, he would have some plausible deniability. The knife sliced through the meat and straight into the bone. Harold stared for a moment. He must not know his own strength. It felt like the knife was wedged in there good and deep. After a couple of tugs, he still couldn't get it out. That was when the blood started rolling out of the cut. At least it was thick red fluid and it looked super real. Harold stared at it, heart racing and his palms sweaty on the knife handle. His animal brain was currently losing its shit, but he had a logical part of his mind too. This had to be a setup from the house's owner. If he'd spent so much time creating the perfect look outside, who was to say he didn't put a bit of effort into the food too? Harold began to smile. Maybe that 4 was heading up to a 5 again. He had to mop up the corn syrup, or whatever it was, which was a pain, but before he did, he took some pictures to use in his blog later. The top half of the ham wasn't touched by the blood, so he was able to slice a piece off for his sandwich. "Well played, sir," he muttered as he slid the hock back into the refrigerator. As he munched on his sandwich, he remembered how human flesh was supposed to taste like pork. He thought he remembered reading it on some Reddit subthread about a tribe in the Pacific calling white people long pork or something. Maybe there was something to it. Taking his sandwich, he sat out on the porch and ate it. As he leaned back in his chair, he began to realize all around him was silence and darkness. By daylight, with a taxi outside, that was charming, but as the creatures of the night began to make their noises he couldn't even identify, it began to feel a little less so. All his life, he'd laughed at rednecks with their guns, but as the sun disappeared, he started to understand a little. His greatest fears were bears and snakes and mountain lions, anything with teeth that was bigger than him. Suddenly he looked down at his sandwich. Could they smell that sort of thing? Could he be attracting them now? Harold ate the last of it as he walked back inside and then firmly locked the door behind him. This was ridiculous. He reminded himself of the excellent ratings this house had. Putting the plate on the sideboard, he went upstairs to take a shower and get to bed. He'd hit the words some more tomorrow. Up there, the wind was louder than below, which was weird. Trees battered against the side of the house like they were trying to get in. Oh, that's a good one, but damn it, I don't have a pen. The constant worry of a writer. It was dimly lit in this room too, but there was one light over the bed, but it used one of those damn hipster Edison bulbs. His chances of writing upstairs were about nil. Torn between excitement for a new phrase and annoyance that this place wasn't more writer-friendly, he went to see about a shower. It was an odd arrangement, a clawfoot tub with a circular curtain around it and a handheld shower wand, so not exactly luxury. But what else was there apart from running out into the rain? The floor wasn't heated either, but he stripped off his clothes quickly and ran to get in. The water pulsed a couple of times before he got the hang of the settings. Holding the wand with one hand, he awkwardly washed himself. When Harold heard the first words, he thought it was part of the whistling from the pipes. They were probably super old. However, holding the wand down by his feet changed the tone, but not the words. Well, not words precisely, more like a scream. He stared at the shower wand and tried to strain his ears. He wasn't a dog, so it made no difference. No, it sounded entirely like the pipes were screaming, like a woman in pain. He didn't have any experience with that sort of thing, but it sounded like agony should do. Another scream, this one almost seeming like it was coming from the drain under his feet. That was more like it. Harold frowned and took a step back. Something was definitely wrong with the pipes, and he would have to reflect that in his rating, at least when he got signal. After that, he couldn't spend any time enjoying the shower. He got out, dried off, and put on his pajamas. Hopping in bed, there were at least plenty of comforters. The blankets wrapped around him, and he pulled them over his head until only his eyes and nose peeked out. The wind whipped the trees even harder. For a little time, Harold drifted off to sleep, wrapped up like a warm package, but his dreams were strange. The roof came off the house, and it was not the stars he saw, but rather the infinite black of nothing. A hand reached down towards him, fingernails rotten and dark like it had been in the ground for too long. Frozen in fear, he waited for it to grab hold of him and crush him to pulpy flesh and blood. Jerking awake, Harold scrambled out of bed, stubbing his toe on the dresser and sprawling on the floor. He had to check himself for injuries because the hand might have got hold of him. What was it about this house and hands? He checked his own in the moonlight coming in from the window. He'd forgotten where the light switch was again. Yes, his own hands were still intact, but they were shaking. The creaking of the house around him reminded him of some of the reviews on the site. People loved to talk things up. Well, that was what he thought back then, but one of those comments came back to him. It was like the place was a fist, and I was in its palm. At the time, he'd thought that was quite a nice piece of jewelry, and he might just steal it to use in a book. But now it didn't sound so enchanting. It sounded threatening and real. His cold feet on the floor informed him that there was an icy breeze blowing from somewhere. Probably a window had gotten open. If he didn't go find it, then rain might come in and he'd be up for the damages from the owner. Damn it, he muttered, padding around, slapping walls again, looking for the switch. He'd been a city dweller his entire life, so the utter darkness of the countryside was quite something to deal with. Unable to find it, he followed the chill outside onto the landing and looked up and down the corridor. Glancing into every room, he couldn't find a single open window, and so he went downstairs. With only moonlight to guide him, he stumbled around in the living room and the dining room and found nothing there. Still, his legs were freezing. After one circuit, he realised that the cold draft was coming from the door to the basement. He'd seen rows of half windows there, and maybe a gust of wind or some wild animal had broken in. Water could also be pouring in. He was going to have to go down there. For all his thoughts about writing in the basement, at this moment in the dark and wind, he didn't really want to. In fact, his skin crawled at this idea. However, Harold straightened his back. This was what it meant to be a horror writer. To experience fear would only make him a better wordsmith. When he opened the door, it was more than just the wind he heard. Harold stopped, the door handle in his hand, and listened to the voice. He couldn't make out what was being said, but it was a man. The writer's mind raced over the possibilities. Maybe it was the owner who came to check on storm damage. Maybe some local old coot had broken in to take shelter. Or maybe it would be the ghost of the bagman, and Harold would have the best experience to write about. Shit, he even had his phone only a couple of feet away on the sideboard. He couldn't dial for help, but he could get some great pictures for his Instagram. Snatching it up, he went carefully down the stairs. The smell of earth hit him in the face, reminding him instantly of his grandmother's garden. He hadn't thought about her in years. Now his throat was dry. Interesting, the body's reaction to fear, Harold noted. He went down the final stairs distracted, so that when he saw the man at the workbench, he didn't fully take it in all at once. The man was huge, hunched over in the small space of the basement, but he was working on something and didn't even turn when Harold cleared his throat. The lone light bulb swayed above the bench, only illuminated what he was doing, not much else. "Excuse me," Harold said, finding himself falling back on ridiculous politeness. "I booked this place for a month." As he worked his way around the stranger, the big man finally looked up and smiled. He had a kindly face. But he also had a pair of spare hands on the bench in front of him, hands that were not his. He was working on the ends, Harold saw in a moment of clarity panic brought. The flesh was splayed out and carefully pinned to the surface. As he stared in horror, the fingers twitched and danced. "Bad worker," the bagman said, grinning even wider, "but I know how to fix it." His eyes then darted to Harold's hands. That was when he screamed. Maybe it echoed in the pipes, maybe it just got swallowed up by the wind. Anyway, he began to run. The stairs seemed to have grown by hundreds of feet, but he ran up all of them. "Screw the book, screw the bagman, it was a very bad idea to have come here." Jacob's voice echoed up to him. "Don't run, Harold. It's really very painless." He needed his hands, and not just for writing. The floor was slippery as he ran, stumbling, falling, and flailing to get to the door. He hadn't taken much notice of the landscape as he was driven up, but there had to be someone around. Follow the road, he thought, even as he heard the bagman climbing the steps from the basement. He was still very far away when the door swung open. His heart leapt with hope until he saw who it was. The woman framed in the doorway looked down at Harold. She was 20-something for sure, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket. She looked like she could kick him down the street without even trying. In her right hand, she had one of those portable typewriters from the 60s in a teal carry case. He had one which he'd almost brought with him. "Oh, you poor thing," she said. And worse, she sounded like she even meant it. "I hate to tell you this, but you're just not right for this story." Harold blinked at her, suddenly not sure if the bagman or this newcomer were worse. She tilted her head. "Yeah, no one likes you. You're not at all relatable, and honestly, people will be glad to see you get killed. That's not really what you want in a main character. I think you know that. Harold screamed out a bunch of gibberish. Words had turned on him all of a sudden. He was a writer, not a character in a book just to be killed off like that. He howled that he could be better and that he didn't need to be replaced, but the woman was already walking past him to the desk where his laptop had once sat. Then the bagman's hand fell on his shoulder. He really looked menacing in the moonlight. An excellent villain, Harold had to admit. Jacob threw him over his shoulder like he weighed nothing, which was true once he had no agency. Together they went back down to the basement, and Harold saw that the bagman had left enough room on his bench for 2 more hands to be dissected. Jacob placed the nail on Harold's right wrist, and before he could even beg, slammed a hammer into it, pinning it to the bench. The white blast of pain should have confirmed that Harold was still a main character, but he could already hear the woman moving around upstairs. When the bagman nailed his left hand the same way, the scream Harold let out must have filled the pipes for the next protagonist to hear. With a cheerful smile, Jacob put away the hammer, even as Harold sobbed and screamed, falling to his knees in front of the bench. Blood ran in rivulets across its surface and dripped off the side onto the earth floor. Jacob found what he'd been looking for, his silver-edged saw. "At least part of you will make it through," he said as he raised the tool in front of him. "Or at least a bit part of you will."
It was nice.
Did you
I
read
didn't get a chance, chat, to read a lot of the stuff that Pip was making for her Patreon. So that was the first time.
Do you want to put some bit more wood on there?
I think I might have to.
Did you recognise the author? It was sort of a culmination of a multitude of authors.
Honey,
we've met.
I recognized a lot of things. I recognized us in there somewhere. You know, with the whole watching the Crime Channel.
Yeah, there was quite a bit.
You were dancing on the lawn, baby, as they like to say.
I put a few little things in there, but mostly it's other people.
Folks, you know.
The pretentious author is always,
yeah,
you know, we know a bunch of those.
Oh, we know a few, folks. We know a few. We've been called it once or twice.
I've never been called it. I don't know who you're talking to. Maybe you've been called it, but I never have.
Maybe I've never had. But
it was. You know what? I find it, because I don't do it very often. I find it fun to write horror.
Horror is tough to write. Horror is tough to write because with horror, the thing is you've got to basically tap into what scares people. And
well, when you think about it, in Character Assassin, the real horror of the story is that he's stuck. He can't write.
He's stuck and he can't write. I mean, and the thing is that has been used as a trope in a lot of King stuff. Now that you mention it.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen King, Stephen King loves to write about
writers love to write about writers.
Yeah,
because it's what we know. You know, write what you know.
But Stephen King takes it to a new level. I mean, if writing was half as interesting as the way Stephen King made it out to be, everybody would be a writer.
Well, he's written a lot of stories about writers going to lonely cabins, and
yeah,
I wanted to write something about that.
There was one he did. I'm trying to remember. It was Depp was in it.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking
one
of.
I'm trying to remember the name of it.
It wasn't a very good movie adaptation.
I thought it was a pretty decent adaptation. I enjoyed it.
He goes crazy, right?
Yeah, he
goes crazy.
I mean, Torrance did it better. Let's be honest.
So here's my question to you. I was just thinking about this as I was reading this.
Okay.
T. Morris, if you were like,
The Secret Window. The Secret Window. That was the name of it.
So if you were asked to go, you were like, "Oh, we want you to write a horror novel."
Oof.
Would you go to if you had the chance and the money, would you go to like a haunted house and write? Or would it be like, that's a super pretentious thing, I'm going to stay in Starbucks? It's
a super pretentious thing to do that. 1, 2, after my experience with Phasmophobia, I don't think so, because the thing is that the thing about Phasmophobia. So if you heard
screaming in the pipes, you'd be out of there.
I would be screaming. I would be the scream in the pipes. I mean, So, Chad, if you haven't seen it, yeah, it was a Secret Window. That's right.
There was a little bit in there about.
There was so the thing is, wait, hold that thought. So for those of you who haven't seen it, for the past 2 Thursday nights, I have played with Phil Rossi, a very talented horror author, who I told him that we'll give him like a week's notice before we start doing it so that he can arrange for time. But we'd like to have him actually come out here and tell stories by the fire with us. And again, it's going to be not just like things that we would like to tell, like scary stories from, say, Ray Bradbury, or scary stories from
I'd like to read some Poe,
from Poe, or even King himself. But I also want Phil to read some of his stuff, because Phil has told some yarns that have kept me up at night. One in particular, one of my favorites of Phil Rossi's is a short story called Snowblind. And I don't know if he has it anywhere on like, if you did a search for it, you would find it on iTunes or something. But he did this. He had a very brief podcast series called Notes from the Vault, and it was some of his short stories. He released it right after.
He's also got a great voice for horror.
He really does. He really does. He was born and raised in Massachusetts, but he has a southern
He has
twang.
inherited a Virginian, like, you'd think he might be from like Georgia or something.
His accent's thicker than mine.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know how he does that. We have to confront him about that when he's here.
If you get a beer on you, you start to talk like real
That's
Virginian.
true. That's true. I do. That's true. But going back to what I was saying earlier, so we've been playing this game called Phasmophobia, where you do a ghost hunt, and because it's a video game, things go wrong, and it's a horror video game, so things go wrong. And I mean, the thing that's the most unsettling about this about the house you walk into is, you walk into the house, and like when you're outside of the house, you hear crickets, you hear some wind. It's very calming. It's very nice.
You go into it. There's
there's like a low rumble, almost something like an HVAC system. Okay, it's like a central air conditioner.
It's one of those noises that kind of puts the human mind on edge.
Yeah, it's like a very disturbing white noise. And then as you're doing stuff around the house, you hear a random creak. You hear a thump. And you're just like, okay, that,
and then
and then
the torches
like,
start flickering.
Well, no, not yet. The torches don't start flickering yet, but then it's like, okay, yeah, you have to go, because this is something I learned in watching some other people play Phasmophobia, is instead of having to just go into the house, you find out where the power box is, and you can restore power to the house. So you go to wherever the power box is, you restore power to the house, and then you can start going around and you start doing different stuff. Like you start setting up cameras, and you're taking temperatures of wherever things are. But then spirit box. But then at random points, the power will go out. So then you got to go back and you got to go. You gotta turn the power back on, and then you start noticing things like, wait, was that chair turned upside down when the power was on? Little things like that. And I'm telling you that has that experience just in that video game has cemented it, that if I ever did, because Phil wants to do that for real. Phil wants to actually go somewhere.
The Waverly Sanatorium.
Like Waverly Sanatorium, or the I believe it's the West Philadelphia Penitentiary, or East Philadelphia Penitentiary.
Penitentiaries.
I mean, he wants to go there and spend a night, do a whole nightly ghost hunt. And I want to do it. But I know for a fact I'm going to be pissing in my pants the whole time.
Adult diapers might be required for both of you.
I really do not want. If someone said, "Well, we'll pay it in the advance," and you go to this haunted house where somebody died, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
By yourself?
By myself? No, absolutely not. Even with a group of people, I don't think I'd want to do it, because it's just. There's a fantastic line of Shakespeare from Hamlet, where Hamlet says, they're talking about the ghost. They're talking about the ghost, the ghost of Hamlet's father, and he says to Horatio, there are, and I believe they're talking about the ghost, and the
so they're
spirit.
talking about the ghost.
And he says there are more things on heaven and earth that are dreamt of, Horatio. And even, I don't think Shakespeare was necessarily, I don't think he was a skeptic, but I don't know if he believed in ghosts for realsies. I mean, he wrote about them enough.
So do you believe in ghosts?
But I believe I have had certain experiences, Chad, that make me believe that it would be possible.
I like to think that it's an imprint of something, like something bad happens in a place, there's an imprint. I don't know if I believe it's the soul of somebody kicking around. I believe it's probably an imprint of somebody. If like something horrible happens, it leaves an imprint in the for want of a better term, ether. The way the, the Victorians thought of it.
Panic said it. I stick to writing music now, which I'll stop asking about, but I'm so excited about you hearing the little theme song I've wrote for Blind Leads the Blind. I haven't heard it yet, but it is on my to-do list before I go to bed tonight, and I do promise you I will be listening to it. I will be listening to it. But yeah, it's one of those things where, chat, I don't want to tempt fate, you know. I mean,
I can tell you a ghost story.
What, like a
No, one of my uncles told me his ghost story, and this is my uncle. You didn't meet. He's Craig and Alan's dad.
Okay.
The eldest of my dad's brothers, and he's a very salt of the earth kind of person. Not the kind of person given to flights of fancy, shall we say?
Right.
But
okay. So what did he say?
His little short story was that he had when he was young and he just first got married, he was a manager of a farm in New Zealand.
Okay.
And he wasn't the first. It was like an old farm, so had a few managers in its time. And he got this job, and he was very excited about it. And the house was small, but it had like a central corridor that went down, and then there was a door, and then there was the kitchen.
Right.
And he said to me, we were sitting there and we're having dinner one day, and I hear, walking towards the kitchen door, hobnail boots. There's a particular noise that hobnail boots make on wooden floors.
Okay.
And he was like, he said to me, I was like, who's that bastard coming into our house? Right. And he said, I picked up like fire iron or something around. Yeah. I was like, all right, you bastard. And then, so they heard the footsteps go up to the door, and they stop. And so he's like, oh, I'll get this bastard. He throws the door open, ready to like scream at this person. Yeah. And there's nobody there.
Well, that could have been the pipes knocking.
No, but no, the pipes don't knock in a. It's New Zealand farmhouses are pretty like one-story simple sort of structures.
Okay,
they're not like like a grand English farmhouse or anything. Okay. Very simple structures. Nice. But so he then told the guy who owned the farm, I had this weird experience. It was there was nobody around. He looked around, there was nobody there. And then the guy was like, oh yeah, well, it could have been the previous manager. He hung himself in the house. He's like,
they didn't bother to tell him
Please tell me that before I go.
Yeah. Hold that thought, Chad.
So yeah, that was, and I tended to believe him because he was definitely not given to whims. A very salt of the earth, New Zealand-y type person. I did have a really strange experience once when in my very first flat. It was in Wellington. I was in a downstairs flat. It was a really run-down old house. And I was in the downstairs flat, and above us in this old house, it probably would have been from the 30s or 40s, this house. Up in the flat upstairs, there had been it was quite big, like 4 or 5 young people like me that were going to university in this house.
Right.
But then one weekend I saw that they were moving out, and they moved out. And then the next day, after they'd moved out, I heard all these really weird noises in the middle of the night. And, usually in New Zealand you'd say, oh, it's possums or something like that. But we were in the downstairs apartment, then there was the floor. It wasn't the roof that was above us. It was the house. And we decided that it sounded like a murderous dwarf with one leg cut off.
Okay.
Stomping across the floor. And that was kind of scary. Because we were down the side of there was no other houses around.
Right.
And we would have had to, if we wanted to run out of the house, we'd have to run up past this apartment.
So that's a great segue. So this is one of the things that I've had happen to me that makes me think of.
Okay, tell me your
something
story.
Behind. Well, you were there for it.
Oh, that's right.
Okay,
yes.
so here's what happened, Chad. So we were doing a ghost tour in Dunedin, right? And it was less of a ghost tour and more of a.
It was a historical tour.
It was a historical tour.
At night.
And they were trying to sell it that there were some people that were there were some reportings of hauntings in the area, et cetera, et cetera.
They were like, this is an area where there was a big fire.
Yeah,
and somebody's
yeah.
wife was killed.
And-
I
but-
love those sort of things because they give you the history.
Yeah,
that
they
you
give you
don't
the
get
history
in-
context,
So,
which
I
is
like
fine,
ghost tours.
and that's cool. I always like stuff like that too. I mean, I remember in New Orleans. But that's the thing. See, in New Orleans, I went on a ghost tour, but we did it during the day.
Yeah.
It was a vampire ghost tour, and it was during the day. And in all fairness, it was fun. But did I ever feel creepy about it? Did I feel odd about it? Did I get any kind of heebie-jeebies? Even in New Orleans, where there's a lot of hoodoo voodoo going on
There's
there.
a lot of history.
There's a lot of history there. I never felt unsettled. I remember there was this one clever story they were talking about, this Madame of New Orleans, and I cannot remember her name to save my life. But she was a colorful character, and people would go to her for
that was probably the one.
seances.
That was
and
probably
all
the
this
one
stuff.
that Kathy Bates was. It the one that Kathy Bates.
Yes, the person that Kathy Bates. No. It was the one that Angelica, not Angelica Houston. Shoot.
The black lady.
Yeah, the gorgeous. She
it's
would
gonna
crack
run.
me across her knee like a sawed-off shotgun. That one. She was in Waiting to Exhale. I'm blanking on her name now.
Yes, but she basically
and-
played a voodoo queen.
Yeah, she played a voodoo queen. And
Marie, is it not Marie Labeau?
yes, thank you.
Marie Labeau.
Well done,
That
well
was the
done,
name
baby.
of the queen,
Marie-
not the.
Thank you, Steampunk Rick. I have a crush on her too. Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett.
I'm
When
sure
she's
that-
walking away from the car and waiting to exhale, and the car's on fire, and she just goes. I mean, that's fierce, baby. That's just fierce.
I'm sure Marie Labeau would think that was
Yes,
a good
that
person
was
to play.
was appropriate. But Marie Labeau. It was they were talking about the legend of Marie Labeau, and we were at her grave, and I this did make me smile. Somebody said that it's tradition for you to leave an offering for Marie Labeau. You basically you put your offering in maybe like a couple of quarters or something. You knock on her on her grave. You wipe her feet, and then you back away, right? And I said, well, I'm getting ready to go on. Yes, Black Panther's mom. Thank you, nerd girl.
Oh yes,
good
yes,
call.
Yes, she was also that.
She's looking fine, like a fine wine there. But anyway, but so I did. So I went on ahead and I said, well, I have a flight at 3:00 that I got to catch. So I put an offering on there, and I did the knock, and I wiped my feet, and I walked back. Walked away from the grave in respect. I'm not kidding. Not only did I have the smoothest flight ever, chat, coming home from New Orleans, we arrived an hour early. So I'm saying, maybe there is something to this. Now,
Don't
that
mess
being
with
said,
Marie Labeau.
yeah. Now, that being said, we were doing Dunedin at night, and it was pretty harmless. And then they were talking about the library, and they
I
said
can never remember. It's an American library.
it's an American Rockefeller.
Rockefeller.
It was Rockefeller who had put in the library, and it was actually done. There was a child that apparently went missing during the construction of the library.
No. She went missing in the library.
That's right. She went missing
And
in the
nobody
library.
knows where
and
she
nobody
went.
knows where she went. Nobody knows where she went. And it's not like Dunedin's a big town, but especially in the time when she went missing.
Well, no, actually, in the gold rush, it was a little bit more populated.
Okay, okay.
But still, yeah.
But still, it was Dunedin, and it's not like it was Wellington or Auckland or
It was
something like that.
winter.
It was winter, and the kid just basically disappeared in the library. But there was one last place and they did say there were some things that happened at the library. There were some sightings of something going on, and nobody could quite figure out who it was, or it could be the child, it could have been the child's mother. There were all these different things, but they couldn't. He said, but there was one thing that people, particularly the locals, do attribute the supernatural happenings to, and I'm going to take you there. So we're going through the
circular stair.
Yeah.
No, it's sort of going down.
So we
quite
go.
a big staircase.
It's a big staircase, and we had to go down like at least 4 floors.
Yeah.
Because we were basically going into, well, ironically, we were going to the basement. And we had cleared the second landing, right? You know how things are, where it's like you go down a flight of stairs, and there's a landing and there's a hallway.
There were hallways off
Yeah,
the off
yeah,
the
there was
landing.
there were hallways that led off the landing. First stairs, no big deal. Everything was fine. Second stairs, no big deal. Everything
Now,
was fine.
were you in front and I was behind, or
You were in front of me.
you were at the
in front of me.
back? You were at the back.
I was at the back.
There was a line of
There was
people
a lot
going
of us,
down, and you
all
were
of
at the
us
back.
going down. And the thing was, as I noticed, the first stair, there are no lights on. There are no lights on in any of these corridors.
We were using. I think we were using flashlights. So we didn't
Yeah,
fall
we
down
were
the
using the
stairs.
flashlight, and he was also shining his flashlight up because he was in the lead. And we're all going down. And again, every corridor, landing, no lights down the corridor, that's fine. Second landing, lights down the corridor, that's fine. We get to the third landing. I'm not exaggerating this. I do love to exaggerate a story, but I am not exaggerating this. I get to the third landing, and the same feeling I have when I play Phasmophobia, it hit me in that third landing, and it hit me harder than I have ever. I have only experienced fear, maybe like raw fear, a handful of times in my life. This was one of them, and I remember my heart rate just was going through the roof. Every hair on my body was standing up, and my brain was screaming, "You got to get out of that landing."
And don't look down that corridor.
And don't look down that corridor. Because the other two corridors, I looked down and it was fine. But that third corridor, an instinct, and that's the only, it wasn't a little voice in my head. It wasn't anything like that. It was a raw instinct. And it said, whatever you do, T, do not look down that corridor. Just keep moving. And I bumped into Pip. And I said, Pip, you got to keep moving.
And I was like, what?
And Pip's like, what is it? And I felt her turn around and I said, Pip,
Just keep moving.
just keep moving. What's wrong, T? Pip, just fucking, I think I said, just fucking move. I think you heard the fear in my voice.
Yes,
I'd like to
I
think
was
you
like,
did.
I did. I was like, what's going on? I don't see it. I was looking like, oh,
I was terrified. We got to
weirdly.
then we get to the end. We get to where he's taking us, to where the guy is taking us, and he goes, and we heard like running water, and he's like, yeah, okay, right now you're standing on a Maori burial ground, and I was like,
Typical to stick a library on top of.
I was like, wait, what? And they were like, yeah, it wasn't until they were building it wasn't until they were building the library they discovered they were on a burial ground.
it was like caves and
And
stuff.
there were caves, there were underground rivers, there were all these different things. And according to and this is how woke the New Zealand government, even when they were building this in Rockefeller's day, were. They basically got the local clan leaders, the local
Tribe.
Maori tribe leaders, and they were like, "Can you bless this area? Because we've really put a lot into this library. It's going to help everybody, including the local Maori people." Is it? They were like, "Yeah, sure." And they did what they had to do to make sure that
But the weird
spirits were
thing was that
appeased.
you felt fine down there.
No, I didn't.
Didn't?
I felt a little uneasy, but I really didn't want to go back to that third corridor.
I think we didn't go up.
No, we didn't.
We went out. There was a side door.
There was a side door that led
And
us
you were like,
out.
thank God.
And I remember taking a deep breath, and Pip was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I am now."
Yeah. Then you
just-
waited until we got out.
Yeah,
before
and
you
then I told Pip about everything that happened, and she was like, "Oh, you were just worked up." And I was like, no, there's I've been worked up before. I know. Whoa, I know what it's like to be worked up. I wasn't worked up. There was
something.
something triggered off my. I mean, like I said, something
Like you got
triggered,
goose flesh and.
Yeah, something really triggered my fight or flight. Something triggered that fight or flight. And I tell you, I love this woman, because if I hadn't loved this woman, Chat, I would have
Shoved me out of the
I would
way.
have shoved her out of the way just to get out of that corridor.
What do you think you would have seen if you looked down the corridor?
I don't want to know.
Oh, you don't want to
I
think about
really
it?
don't want to fucking know, honey. I
could go back
really
to
don't want to
Dunedin
fucking
sometime.
know. Absolutely not. No, I don't. I
we
don't
can go
really
back
know.
to Dunedin. Just don't go down to the caves in the
Damn straight.
damn Skippy.
Damn Skippy. All right. Pip read one of hers, so I'm going to read one of mine by the firelight. So I have actually retitled this. I had retitled this story. This story is now. Oh wait, you might actually want to hold this. You can actually find this story free on as a free download on Amazon. So you are more than welcome to download it and enjoy it.
What's it called on Amazon?
On Amazon, it's called Daddy's Little Girl.
That's right. Yes, Daddy's
This is
Little
called
Girl.
Daddy's Little Girl. This one, however, this was the original draft of it. It's called and I called it "Is Your Love Strong Enough?" But it's now called Daddy's Little Girl. It is now released on Amazon for free. But if you want to,
I don't know if this book's still available.
oh, that's right. This was an anthology. I don't know if the light will
Do it from below.
yeah.
And proper.
But this is called Gimme Shelter, and this was actually the first anthology that Pip and I appeared in together.
I might read mine afterwards.
So yeah, so this is called Daddy's Little Girl. The strike against the door was hard enough to make the wood splinter. It was also hard enough to make the shotgun in Reggie's hand jump. He splayed his fingers on the forend, and that was when he noticed how sweaty his hands had become. With one shell at the ready, another already in the chamber, it was time to implement Plan B. The door buckled a bit again. Reggie's bodies jerked. Plan B. It was simple. Just like in their wills. If one of them were struck on a machine and capable of making this... Oh, sorry. Let's try that again. The door buckled again. Reggie's body jerked. Plan B. It was simple. Just like in their wills. If one of them were stuck on a machine and incapable of making decision for themselves, the other would carry out the final wish and terminate all life support. It stood to reason. What kind of life could be expected in such a condition? When the light from outside streamed through the crack in the door, Reggie tightened his grip on the shotgun. Both of them were on life support right now. What kind of life could be expected? So why was it so different now? Was it because there were no machines? No body lying prone in a stark, sterile hospital bed? No unnerving quiet save for that hollow, sucking, artificial sound of deep breathing while an EKG keeps time with a constant beep, beep, beep? At least that's what you see in the movies anyway. The wood panel broke free, leaving a perfect rectangle-shaped hole in the walls and in the walk-in closet's door. The light from outside poured in at first. Then a small figure stepped into the sunshine and peered quietly into Reggie's hiding place. Plan B. Reggie shouldered the shotgun. He felt the curve of the trigger, the metal softly click as his finger tensed. There were no tubes. There were no machines. There were no sounds of a hospital. All he heard were Elsa's low, long breaths. He couldn't see her face, and that was a cold comfort considering how he had seen her last. But he could hear her breathing. She was breathing, but it wasn't her. What kind of life could be expected? "Oh, teddy bear," Reggie croaked. "Daddy loves you. You know that, right?" Her hair was frizzy, wild, as if she had just woken up to watch Phineas and Ferb with him. She didn't like the cartoon all that much, but she did like watching him watch the cartoon. What kind of life could be expected? The trigger moved again. He couldn't miss. Reggie tried to swallow back the sob forming in his throat, but it erupted seemingly on its own accord. Snot and spittle kissed his skin as the shotgun faltered, landing heavily into his lap. He knew the thing standing in front of him didn't understand why he was shaking his head. "I can't, teddy bear," he wailed. "I can't." Through a watery haze, he watched Elsa's hand, her knuckles reduced to the semblance of ground beef, reach through the hole of the closet door. She took a deep breath on finding the makeshift brace underneath the doorknob, and her fingers worked around it in a tight grip. First, Elsa pushed at the brace, then pulled, and wood dug into her arm as she wrenched the brace free. If it really were Elsa, she would be screaming like a banshee. Instead, with a mere grunt, the thing tugged her arm free of the splintered edge. "Okay," Reggie whispered, nodding as the doorknob turned. "Okay." Light now poured into the closet. that's the same one.
Yeah.
And okay, so I'll go back a bit, but yeah, the truck lacking a muffler, it's also lacking a bed. I mean, this is not a cat. This is not what you would call a truck in good condition. But it just went by. Anyway. Okay, Reggie whispered, nodding as the doorknob turned. Okay. Light now poured into the closet, but he could feel her shadow on him. He looked at the gun across his lap, but he kept nodding. It's okay, teddy bear. Daddy loves you. He expected Elsa to leap on him, as she had done when she attacked Sandra. Instead, she took a breath, then another, and finally started walking to where he sat. The hand reaching out to him wasn't the torn, mutilated hand that had punched through the closet door. This one was cold, pale, and open. Reggie blinked, sucking back another sob, and took her hand into both of his. The clatter of the shotgun, his wailing, and her hollow, deep breaths surrounded him. He was drowning in memories, in chaos, in the madness that he had managed to keep at bay until now. Her hand was so cold he had to warm it up. He felt Elsa pull at him. Reggie wasn't sure where the strength came from him to get him on his feet, but he was suddenly standing and following his little girl out of the walk-in closet. Sitting on the edge of the bed, on her side of the bed, was Sandra. He couldn't see her face. It was shrouded by long, clumped strands of unkempt hair. Head hanging forward, motionless, she sat there. Reggie followed Elsa's lead, his eyes watching the unmoving form of his wife. He could see the blood now dry on her palms, the stains of blood and puke across her nightdress, and through strands of hair, the putrid bite wound between her neck and shoulder. Elsa gently pushed him back towards the bed. Reggie looked at her for a moment, then took a seat by Sandra. Hi, baby, Reggie managed. Sandra's head lolled in his direction and slowly came up. Strange, sickly yellow-red eyes widened on seeing him and then softened. The breath that hit him in the face should have made him power vomit all over her. But there was something in Sandra's eyes, fleeting, but powerful and familiar. Her lips were chapped, but he didn't care. He had missed kissing those lips since she surrendered to the fever. Reggie leaned forward and touched his lips against her cold, abrasive skin. A cold hand stroked his forearm. It was Elsa. She would do that when they would go to the dentist's office together. She did that to make sure he wasn't afraid during the cleaning. He looked at them both, and his body shuddered. It's okay, teddy bear, he said to the child, her lips pulling back in a slight snarl. Daddy isn't afraid. That wasn't a line Reggie fed her. He meant it. Even when he looked back to Sandra, her shallow breathing growing faster. Even the sickness didn't scare him. Not now. Soon they'd be together again. A happy family. Together again.
Ooh. Oof. That's tough. Did I feel a couple of spits of... I got a couple of spits of rain.
I noticed that some of the pages were getting wet.
Yeah, we might have to call it if it starts
No, we
raining.
don't have to call it. It's just...
My computer is literally sitting there.
Look at it. It's not coming down. It's not coming down. We will be able to move fast. We haven't heard the fire sizzle too much. That's I'm really proud of that story. That was my first ever.
I think I'll read my story from there too because I like this little. This is all zombie based.
Yeah. This was called Gimme Shelter, and it was I think it was a stretch goal, wasn't it?
It was some sort of
It was a stretch goal and a Kickstarter.
It's about 10 years old now. You realise?
Wow. No. I mean, and we were in here with some really good people. Piper J. Drake was in here.
Christiana.
Chuck Wendig was in here.
Mer.
You. Mur Lafferty, Peter Woodworth, Christiana Ellis,
Good people.
Jadzia.
Where's mine? Oh, unexpected.
Introduction by Dr. John Smar. I forgot about that.
So let me.
You are
Unexpected Residence. I remember this one.
Yeah, 72.
Mm-hmm.
We'll
Oh, this was a Galileo Games thing.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
if you remember, or if you've been a longtime fan of the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences, you know that we have a role playing game with Galileo Games, and they did an RPG based in our world called
Ministry.
the Ministry Initiative.
Yes.
And but before that, we first heard about Galileo Games when J.R. Blackwell and Jadzia were doing a role-playing game called Shelter in Place, and it was about it was a Fate Core RPG set in a zombie apocalypse. And as one of the stretch goals for it, J.R. did she put together
It was a short fiction.
a short fiction, zombie based, and it was called Gimme Shelter. And I got a chance to. She said, "I'd really like for you to write," and I said, "I've never done this, but sure." And she was really taken by my story. I remember she told me, and I was nervous because I'd never done horror before, and I'd never done zombie horror before.
I like the horror that goes for the feels.
Yeah. I think I'm big on that too.
I don't think I did. I didn't go for the feels. I'm not sure. I think
You
I
just went for the scares?
I went for the scares. Unexpected Residence. The night vision camera finally focuses on a man's face. Thick set with broad, capable shoulders, he nonetheless has wide, terrified eyes. His hands are shaking, making the camera vibrate wildly until he has the focus in what he believes to be the perfect position. Behind can be seen a curtain waving against a darkened window, and the sound of the wind sliding its way into the room provides an eerie counterpoint to the man's laboured breathing. A scream sounds. It echoes wildly inside the house, but then is immediately cut off. The man whips around with the camera, but all it reveals is a mass of dark green movement and a curtain doing a little dance against the moon. Jerry, where are you? Steve hated yelling. It was the mark of an amateur, but this was one ghost stalk that hadn't gone right from the beginning. 4 hours of trying to get their equipment set up on the old slave plantation had slowed the whole thing down from the first moment. Now his two teams were separated, one in the big house, one somewhere in the grounds. He couldn't reach either of them, and their stream on the internet was still churning on. Oh, this is about streaming. Are they on Twitch, do you think? Probably.
This must be the early days.
He couldn't reach either of them, and their stream into the internet was still churning on. They were going to look like total idiots to the entire world. The most popular ghost investigators on the web looked like amateurs, and the sponsors would not be impressed. Steve threw down the walkie-talkie in disgust and instead turned to the split screen that should have showed his team. All there was now was static. He'd gone for a piss and come back to a total shitstorm. Taking a deep breath, centering his chi, he paused the feed and ran it back to the spot where it had gone dark. Reese and Ellen's camera went black at the exact moment when they went down the hill to the stream. It simply stopped. Steve took another breath and then switched to Ty and Adam's feed. They'd been in the plantation house where they had set up their HQ. Ty was a new investigator and had been nervy enough about his only second hunt. Still, when Steve saw the image that flashed across the screen just before he let Ty's scream out too, the man pulls himself together and focuses the camera on his own face again. Oh, they're coming. Fuck, we should have stayed together. Pearls of sweat are beading on his forehead, running down his face. But they weren't what we thought they were. We didn't expect them. His head jerks up as the house begins to rattle to the sound of many thumps. The old building, built on the backs of slaves, now sounds like a drum. Distantly, a window shatters. A form at the end of the corridor. Steve hammered the pause button. It's the one image that is clear before the cameras go down. A human shape outlined in the moonlight in the corridor. his outrage goes to delight. A full-body apparition? The ultimate proof of the paranormal, and as clear as if he'd drawn it on the screen himself. He can't help his grin. It doesn't matter about the stream now. Some little technical difficulty isn't going to get in the way of this. Picking up his torch, Steve darted away from the display and set off to find Ty and Adam. He picked his way carefully over the snake-like curls of cable and then down the stairs to the ground floor. That's when he saw it. The main cable leading up to the HQ had been jerked clean out of its jack. Ty had taped it down properly, but really it didn't matter now. The house was large, but not huge, so he easily found the corridor where their last location was. Flashing the light around, he called out their name. Flashing the light around, he called out their names. Something moved down there. A human shape bent over. It could be Adam setting up a ball test for the apparition. Adam! Steve moved towards him. That was amazing. Wait till you see what we've got on the camera upstairs. As the light hit the bent-over figure, it straightened, and he knew immediately it is not Adam or Ty. It is far too substantial, far too fleshy and real to be the kind of unliving thing that they spent so much of their free time chasing. Steve's bowels contract. Footsteps on the stairs, running, screaming, and there she is, Ellen, covered in blood, scratched by twigs, her eyes as wide as the moon outside the window. Not ghosts, not fucking ghosts, she is screaming. Below, he can hear the groans. They have broken through the second-floor doorways. The zombies are moving, slowly but calmly up. They're hungry. Steve can smell them. Steve puts down the camera and looks at Ellen. Unlike ghosts, they need to get in, he says calmly. They can't come through the walls like apparitions. His voice is cold and clinical. He observes that with some wonder. Are you suggesting we barricade ourselves in here? Ellen swallows, pushing her hair out of her eyes with still shaking hands. He takes one of those hands and feels it grow firmer in his grasp. What other choice is there now? We have to rely on each other. You are just a plumber, she says through gritted teeth. Used to be, he says as the sound of their feet on the stairs can be heard. Now, we're all just survivors. Totally based on...
You kind of base that on a couple of things. You base that on both ghost hunters, whom we respect, and ghost. I think it's Ghost Adventurers,
yes.
who we do not. Those guys are absolute pillocks.
But who knew I'd written about streaming? Before
I know.
Before
streaming became such a big
then,
thing.
10 years ago, you could stream, couldn't you?
You could stream, but it cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And it was. Ow!
Jesus Christ! You just stood on my foot.
Yeah, I know, because somebody came out here with bare feet. Whose fault was that? Whose fault was that?
You for standing on my feet.
Yeah, well, that was.
Ow!
Oh, hon, sorry. I'm working this fire from a lot of angles, man.
It's actually not that cold out here for me to be out in bare feet. Ow!
You shouldn't be out here in bare feet to begin with, because remember the last time I came out here in bare feet?
What happened?
I got eaten alive.
Yeah, but it's too... I mean, the bugs have all been killed.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure once you get down to 40 degrees at night, the bugs are...
Pretty sure, she says, Chet. Pretty sure.
Well, I guess I'll find out. I'll let you know in the morning. It's been a while since I've read that. I vaguely remembered that it was based on something like Ghost Hunters. Yeah,
and Ghost Hunters.
Fly, my pretties. Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, these are the oak chips.
Ah.
So they're burning a little harder.
Burning a little.
Sorry.
Burning a little softer is the mesquite, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
I hope the railway. I'm sorry, the railway. I hope the speedway is.
Has calmed down a bit.
Yeah.
So, Chad, is this working for you guys? Ghost stories by the fire? Because
you got any commentary?
I think people are digging it. I think they're digging it. I know that I lost Panic's audio. Panic lost audio for a brief moment, but then she said she got it back. Yes, yeah, Kat's loving it. So there's that.
Oh,
so
that's good.
That's good. Cheers. Here's to you.
Should we read one more story each?
I think we're gonna. I think we are gonna read one more story each. Yes.
Because I know the other story I'm going to read. Oops, I just said that.
Now, do you want to read your story? Or do you want to read?
No, I want to read my story.
You want to read? You want to read?
I have a funny horror story.
A funny horror story.
Well, I think it's funny.
Which one? Oh,
I think it's funny.
Like-
I don't know if anybody else will think it's
Yeah.
funny.
I'm actually gonna hold back on one of my stories because my horror stuff is not. I don't have a lot of it, so I need to stretch it out a bit. I need to stretch out my horror just a wee bit.
Well, I'm going to read my horror and then I'm going to go to Poe because I love reading Poe.
Do you have Poe on? Do you have
No,
Poe
I'm
on
going to
there?
do one more tonight and later on we'll do another.
Oh yeah.
When
We're
we come
definitely
back
do
and do
another one.
another.
We're definitely going to do this again. I mean, we just had to work out some of the logistics of it. Like, it's one thing. See, the nice thing about doing the lore is that you had the backlights. We had the lighting from the iPad, but now we're actually reading. We're actually reading.
Where's the...
We're actually reading from the actual books, print books, and these books are not backlit, so that
I
kind
love
of
a good fire.
yeah, we love a good fire, and this is definitely a good fire. I don't think it's been as bright as our most recent one, but it's still doing all right. It's not bright enough to read by,
No.
but I do think we need to do one more story from this. Again, this is the Time Life Enchanted World series. This is from the Ghost volume. And the thing that I'm only disappointed about is that you don't see the artwork that goes with this.
Yeah, you could always post some pictures.
The
on
artwork on
Instagram
this,
or something.
the artwork has been absolutely.
Who writes? Who are the authors of these
These
things?
are all folklore stories. These are
Oh,
like
okay.
short-
But
these-
who wrote them? I mean, somebody.
It doesn't say. These are just like.
There's no
ghost
authors on the front.
These are the kind of ghost stories that are passed on for, like.
Like, there's nothing in the front.
No, it's just the.
I feel sorry for these authors who actually wrote them.
These are these are the kind of stories that are.
Yeah, but they're adaptions, right?
Do what?
They're adaptions of short stories. I mean, I could write...
No. These are folk tales that are passed on.
True, but somebody has to write them. Like
Somebody has to
Robin
write
Hood.
them. Yeah.
Someone can write a story about.
Yeah, exactly. It's something like that. But these are tales that have been passed down for so long that
As a librarian, I'm like, who's
nobody
the author?
nobody knows who the author is. All right. So this is
People who made the book know who the author is.
probably do. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. This one's called A Meeting on the Road Home. Late one March night in the English country of Lancashire, a man of average height and middle years left a tavern called the White Bull and headed down a narrow lane for home. His name was Gabriel Fisher, and with him was his dog Trotty. Fisher was perhaps a little merrier than he had been during the day, but the night's journey was to sober him quickly. A sickle moon cast its thin light down on a tree and hedgerow. The evening was chilly, and Fisher walked along briskly enough, hearing little else but his own soft footfalls. As the man and his dog reached the midway point of their homeward journey, however, the silence was shattered by a high-pitched scream. The dog began to whine. Fisher automatically ordered it to silence, and the sound of his own voice helped restore his courage. He peered into the gloom. On the road ahead was a figure, roughly human in form. At the distance and in the light, it was hard to say. Firmly gripping his walking staff, Fisher approached. The figure was a woman. She must have emitted the scream herself. But why a woman abroad at this hour on a little-traveled road?
Why was a woman? That's it. She must have admitted the
Scream herself. But why was a woman and abroad at this hour on a little-traveled road? Even as he pondered this, his dog turned tail and fled. Fisher shouted after it, shrugged, and hurried to catch up with the woman, who had begun walking in the direction he himself was taking. She spoke not a word, and her bowed head was concealed by a large bonnet. Fisher drew up beside her and began to question her, but to his solicitous queries she made only the faintest replies. Yet her voice was somehow soothing, teasing even, with a hint of lovely melody. He adjusted his long step to her shorter one, and paced beside her down the road. She carried a large cloth-covered market basket, and after a moment Fisher asked if he might carry it for her. She handed the basket to him, and he happily settled the wicker handle on his arm. The woman's gentle voice said, "You're much too kind." Then it broke, into an unpleasantly mocking, tinkling laugh. Fisher looked in some surprise towards his companion, but she was turned away from him, apparently examining the hedge that bordered the road. The laugh sounded again, more loudly. It came from the basket. Fisher stopped in his tracks and, with a horrified oath, flung the basket away. As he stared, it hit the ground, its cover fell away, and a head, whiter than the cloth that had concealed it, bounced out onto the road. Teeth shone in the wide-stretched mouth, from which issued a stream of cackling giggles. Fisher whirled to face his companion, who had turned toward him. Her bonnet had fallen back. Her shoulders shook with soundless laughter. And she had no head.
Ooh.
Fisher leapt over the basket and took off down the road, running as he had not run since boyhood. Over the pounding of his heart he heard scuffling and then quick-footed steps behind him. He ran on, his breath coming in loud sobs, and as he ran he looked back only to see the arm of the woman raised high, lifting the head like a lantern. The head laughed again, and she threw it after him. It struck the dirt and of its own accord sprang back into the air, whisking past Fisher, its eyes glittering, its teeth clacking. When it landed on the road, Fisher made an attempt to jump over it, but the head jumped too, snapping at his ankles. Once more the head passed him and then cut in front of his path and forced a second leap from Fisher, one that took his feet just clear of the vicious, biting grin. Fully caught up on its macabre sport now, the head played about his feet, snapping and laughing maniacally. Fisher sped on, too terrified to tire or even look back, although he realized that the woman and her head were close behind him. When he came to a shallow stream that ran across the road, he charged through it in an explosion of spray, then continued up a rise in the road. As he crested the hill, Fisher cast a quick glance over his shoulder. And the sight he saw in that one instant was impressed on his mind for the rest of his days. Below him on the far side of the stream stood a woman's figure, tall and stolid, and headless still. Around its feet cavorted the head, snapping and snarling at some outlandish terrier. The hair on the head was caked with mud and the face blotched with dust, yet the head's baleful energy seemed to reach a new pitch. Fisher could see its eyes blazing with malignity and hear a hellish echo in its cackling laughter. Sick with loathing, he ran on, but he ran alone. The ghost, apparently limited in its territory, like others of its kind, could not cross running water. Gabriel's Fisher adventure ended safely, even a little comically. He had arrived home to find an irritable wife soothing a still trembling Trotty. Her response to his stammered explanation was a barbed witticism. She said that she was glad he had learned the wisdom of coming home early, even though it had taken a headless woman to teach him. She, head and all, had never been able to make the point. Others, too, scoffed when Gabriel recited his tale. But he was not the last person beset by the ghoul on the lonely stretch of road. Why the woman and her head patrolled there in the darkness, no one ever knew. Nor did they know precisely when the haunting ceased, for the people of Lancashire gave up all use of that narrow lane by night, and children would not venture there, even in daylight.
Ooh.
This book has got so many good, juicy, folklore style stories.
Man, you could. That's useful. Maybe if we ever decide to write horror, we can.
We use this. That's why I kept them. I kept this one and I think the other one I have in there is Night Creatures.
Ooh.
And they have other
Creatures of the Night.
Creatures of the Night.
Yeah, I love this.
Creatures.
What does he say? Creatures of the Night. Oh, I love the.
50 biddies for spooky stories. Thank you very much for that, Panic. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Which the biddies.
Boyfriend just came back from the store with medicine, heating pads, and bubble bath because I'm feeling really sore. I'm so spoiled. Are you not feeling good?
Are you sick or did you overexert yourself?
Yeah. You got to pace yourself. As we've all been learning, you got to pace yourself in this time. Okay. So you're gonna do another horror story.
What shall I do? I have two choices. One is kind of about the church we went to that had dead bodies on display. The other one is about a theme park. So I'll let Chert decide.
What sounds more fun? A church with dead bodies in it, or a theme park? Oh, Nerd Girl with 100 biddies.
Thank you for the biddies.
And they're oh, that's right. Now Twitch has got these Halloween.
Oh, that's cool.
Animated
So
things.
what do you think? Do you want to hear about dead bodies?
Okay,
in
Cat
the
votes for church with dead bodies. Panic and her boyfriend are moving. So yeah,
Oh, yeah,
that's always a drain.
That's always a
always a
drain.
drain.
Okay, well,
So there's Church with Dead Bodies. So we have
Church with Dead Bodies
Church with
is-
Dead Bodies, or Haunted Amusement Park. Which one you want? Church with Dead Bodies or Haunted Amusement Park? Go on ahead and sound off now, chat. Sound off now.
I just realised I really enjoyed writing a lot of these short stories.
You were having look as much as you complained about your
I had it for about 2 years, and I was like,
but you were doing all right with it, I think. Yeah, you were doing just fine.
It came
with
and go. It came and go. After when the pandemic hit, I was just like, I need to
2
concentrate.
votes for Church with Dead Bodies.
All right, Church with Dead Bodies. Anybody else for
Tough choice. Take me to church.
Take Me to Church? Okay.
All right. Looks like we're going to church.
Okay, give me the light. I need
So
to see
to give you real quick.
To give you a...
Why don't you tell the story about this place in Germany?
Well, so when we went to Germany, we went and
It was a wonderful time in
Oh,
Germany.
we had a lovely time
Great
in
time
Germany.
in Germany.
We went to Bavaria, which is around Munich. Munich
Yeah.
is in Bavaria.
Yeah.
And our lovely cover model, Verena Versatz, and her boyfriend, Sebastian, were our hosts, and they took us around, and it was fantastic. One day we went to the Czech Republic, and then on the way back, we went to this area where we went back into Germany.
Yep.
And we went to this area where there is a well-known church, beautiful church.
It's
a cathedral?
gorgeous.
Well,
It's
not
a
quite a
gorgeous
cathedral,
church,
but
yeah.
a huge, beautifully decorated Gothic church. And in it, they have the bodies of saints, and I put quote marks around saints.
Because these are really well-dressed saints.
Apparently, in the 16th century, there was a fad for they were digging up around ancient Rome, and they discovered all these bodies, or skeletons, and the thinking was at the time, these are martyred Christians.
Yeah.
So they would take these dead bodies from Rome and basically sell them to churches all around Europe. And the Europeans would take them, put them in sort of glass cases, and display them as basically sacred relics. Now, most churches got rid of those sacred relics.
This one did not.
This one did not. This one had, I want to say, 6 or 7 bodies on display. They're all dressed. Actually, you'll hear about them in the story, but they're all dressed up.
Yeah, one of them was toasting with a goblet. Another one had a pimp cane. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy, and also a little disturbing.
I don't know if that was my local church. You probably get used to it, but still.
I guess, yeah. But anyway.
Let me see if I can find this.
So what's the name of this story?
This one's called Holy Bodies.
Again, this is written by Pip.
Yes, this is mine. The quiet of the night was the best time to be in church, Amelia thought as she pushed open the doors. Faint candlelight played over the pulpits, shrouding the beautiful painted ceilings into shadowed mystery. The little sigh that escaped her was the same as every night she came. Once there were 3 cleaners for the basilica, but both of them were far older than her. Lena passed away in the snow the previous winter, just 1 minute chatting with her sister as they walked through the woods, the next face down on the path. Hannah got to be older still, but in the spring she took to her bed, and no amount of warm soup that Amelia brought her did any good. So the youngest cleaner survived, alone and lonesome for her friends. Hannah's funeral was one of the few times that Amelia went to church during the day. She didn't like the looks the congregation gave her, even after all these years among them. Her family lived in the hills. Just wait for that to go past. Her family lived in the hills for generations, but after her mother died when she was 16, she had no other blood relatives in the area. Her father's sister lived far off at Munich, and Amelia never even met her. She wouldn't dare turn up on her doorstep with every chance she'd get turned away with a sneer. So she stayed in the village and made the trek to Valsassen to clean once a week. Sebastian let her ride on his cart when he took his cheese into town, but he didn't talk to her at all. She waited until the basilica was empty at night before beginning her duties. As she walked up the aisle towards the altar, carrying the bucket in one hand, her twisted leg twanged with pain. Agony shot up from her hip, but this was nothing new, no suddenly arrived stranger. She'd been living with it since birth. The odd gate it gave her made water slop over the edge, but since tonight she'd scrubbed the floor, it really didn't matter too much. Lena usually did the floor, but since her death, Amelia did them as best and as quickly as she could manage. Hopefully the Mother Superior wouldn't notice the slight decline of cleanliness. "Good evening, sir," she whispered as she reached the first of the cases, but there was no living priest to hear her welcome. The candlelight flickered over the contents, or rather, the occupant. Saint Valentus, reclining in his bishop's cassock, didn't reply. His hollow eye sockets didn't communicate any particular emotion, either interest or anger. Only death lived behind that glass. Still, the gleam of jewels which covered his exposed bones made him a true beauty, at least to Amelia. And he was not alone. 11 more bodies in their own glass cases lined both sides of the basilica. Some, like Valentus, reclined on decorated couches, as if slightly bored with the goings-on of mortals. Others stood erect, dressed in the finery of a long-gone age, but looking as if they might step down to go to war, or a party perhaps. She often liked to imagine what kind of lives they'd lived before ending up behind glass in Walsassen. Most of the congregation almost forgot the skeletons of the dead saints were there, merely another part of the church they'd known all their lives. Amelia, though, never entered without stopping for a quick chat and to admire them. It seemed like the polite thing to do. Nuns took great care with these bodies over 100 years before. They dressed them in the best fashion of the day, but it was the jewels they added along each curve of bone that always caught Amelia's eyes. Tucked safely behind glass, the stones would have fed all the surrounding villages for a month. Perhaps it was sacrilegious of her, but as beautiful as they made the bones, they did seem a waste on the unliving. Still, they did her no harm, and she'd be happy to have the company, since Lena and Hannah were no longer there to keep her company. They didn't bother her, the dead. The living were of more of a concern. As long as she had work and money to buy a little bread, then the villagers tolerated her. But if she couldn't look after herself, they would drive her out. Farm work tired her, made her weep in pain. This work in the basilica just once a week was all that kept her safe. She was grateful for it and did everything she could to keep the Mother Superior happy. The woman's face was like granite, even when Amelia did her best to make her smile. After that, the girl was grateful for the skeletons and their silence. Bobbing her head to them, she walked haltingly up towards the high altar. There she crossed herself, just in case any nun might be lurking about. They did that sometimes, and were weirdly silent. They were the ghosts she was most afraid of. Just like the skeletons, the vaulted white ceilings must get acknowledged every time. They climbed high above Amelia, with a shape covering every surface, and a fantastical scene depicted in the frame of each shape. The candlelight made it hard to work out what each one actually depicted, but Amelia knew it must have taken one person a very long time to create them, and so high up too. She imagined if she could see them, the blood and torture of saints would be revealed. She was fine that it wasn't so visible at night. She admired the art of the basilica, even if it wasn't really meant for her eyes. Baroque, she'd heard it described as, and the word sounded fancy enough to be correct. The weight of the bucket pulled her body even more out of alignment, and she allowed herself to soft groan at the fresh pain. Still, she held it up a moment as she turned away from the high altar and back towards the polished silver pipes of the organ, suspended on another level above where the congregation sat. Amelia never heard the instrument being played, but she imagined it must be beautiful. The little round painted angels perched between the pipes played instruments of their own. Those details always made her smile. Death and beauty, and right now it all belonged to her, at least in her mind. One last small ceremony she allowed herself. She crossed to the small chapel on the side where the candles were lit in memory of loved ones. Made of only a little beeswax, they were still technically for those who dropped a coin into the slot beside the chapel. However, tonight Amelia, like every other night, dared to take one. Lighting it, she whispered, "For Mother, for Father, for Hannah and Lena." Then she crossed herself, took a moment to breathe in the smoke before turning away. With a sigh, she lowered herself to her knees and began to scrub the floor with a wide brush with as firm a stroke as she could manage. The angle wasn't the best and aggravated her knee, but there wasn't much else to do but keep on keeping on. Concentrating on the tiled floor, she made a game of counting them as she scrubbed. The aisle needed cleaning the most, but soon enough she would have to move on to the other parts of the church. Reaching the end, Amelia wasn't sure how long that took, but at least there was no sunlight peeking in through the stained glass of the windows. She worried that she wouldn't be able to get it all done before the Mother Superior bustled in to check on her progress. The nuns rose before even the sun, so it was uncertain how long she had. She moved too fast. She wasn't careful enough. She scrambled from her knees to her feet too quickly. Her errant hip and foot betrayed her again. With a lurch of her stomach, Amelia's shoe slipped backwards on the wet floor. Her body had no choice but to follow. It wouldn't be the first fall she'd had, and a few bruises were just another layer of pain. However, when the side of her head banged against the edge of a pew, for an instant the surrounding basilica dipped completely into shadow. By the time she found enough air in her lungs to move, an impressive amount of blood from the wound pooled on the floor. Choking back a sob, clutching her hand to the spot, she tried to struggle upright, but she couldn't quite find her feet. The pain of the injury was the least of Amelia's concerns. The blood on the floor. Mother Superior would turn apoplectic with rage at that. Breathing through her mouth, she dabbed at the floor with her dress, attempting to soak it up. Her mind ran through the possibilities. Maybe she could get up and get another bucket, or perhaps she should lie there and feign complete immobility. The nuns might have some sympathy if she pretended to be dead. It was a small hope that she clung to. When the organ began to play, Amelia stopped and flicked a glance over her shoulder. She must have hit her head harder than she thought. The power of the music filled the basilica, but that couldn't be happening. The soaring notes for a second drove the panic out of her mind. The music vibrated through her body as if it were one of the silver pipes themselves. Could one of the basilica's organists come in while she was slipping around on the floor, hurting herself? Amelia, a voice whispered just behind her. It wasn't familiar, and in fact sounded like it was coming from a long way off. Her hand on the pew that did her damage, she turned back and stared up at Valentius. In the faint moonlight coming through the window, the jewels on his skull twinkled like pretty stars, while the spaces where his eyes should be looked darker than caves. His body, encased in the sheerest of muslins, moved smoothly as he leaned down towards her, offering her his hand. "Blood wakes us, dear child." She should have been terrified by the appearance of one of the holy bodies before her. A glance to her right showed that indeed the long place where Valentius usually reclined was empty, the glass swinging loose on its hinges. And it was not just him. Stirring from their places, the rest of the skeletons were turning towards her, shifting as the sounds of the organ filled the basilica. Amelia's eyes widened, and suddenly the wound to her head wasn't as important. She must be witnessing a miracle. If only a nun would come along and confirm what she saw, they might all be famous. Still stunned and dreaming of meeting the Pope, she took hold of Valentius's hand. It wasn't cold or painful when he tightened his grip. In fact, it was warm, even without any flesh around the bones. Looking up at the bejeweled skull, she knew her lack of fear wasn't quite right, but she found she couldn't dig up anything like it. These were the faces she'd known since childhood, as familiar to her as the living members of the congregation, better perhaps since they never judged her. When Valentius pulled her close, one arm going around her waist, she realized his strength, but he did not offer any violence with it. Instead, he guided her into a twirl under his arm. She caught a brief whiff of dried herbs and something sweet and floral, not at all the odour of the dead she expected from him. She didn't know the steps, but Valentius guided her expertly down the aisle, keeping time to the surprisingly lively tune coming from the silver pipes. Amelia's head swam as she got whirled about, and even when she saw they were not alone, the smile did not leave her face. The other holy bodies came down from their cases to join the dance. The two gentlemen, with their puffed pantaloons and gleaming jackets, still kept hold of their golden cups as they danced with each other, mouths slightly agape. 11 undead and herself whirled and danced through the basilica. Amelia's breath lodged in her chest as she tried to keep up with the merriment. Her giggle at being whirled about escaped her and spun up to join the music in the ceiling. The Mother Superior might just pass out from shock if she came upon this scene, and imagining that was even funnier to Amelia. "You've been very kind," Valentius whispered to her, his voice somehow rising above the music. "We saw you from our places. Very kind and true." Amelia didn't know if that was so, but he placed one chilled finger bone against her lips. "The animals, dearest. We saw you take them in. Heal them. And the children too," another holy body added as she turned past them. "That little boy whose father beat him. You helped him escape last year." She frowned at that. How could the skeletons know about that? It had been back in the village she'd helped Ernst leave the house of his brutal parents and got him into the cart with Sebastian to head towards Munich. Shaking her head, she peered closer at Valentius as he went on. "You gave to those who had even less than you. We saw that, even if no one else did. You loved Lena and Hannah and cared for them when they became ill." The skeleton's dance slowed, and she realized she was now the center of their attention. Another of the holy bodies pressed by, reaching out and brushing her cheek. "Kind, sweet Amelia." Her name echoed in the basilica as the skeletons, without lungs or flesh, repeated it, until other voices took it up, ones she recognized. In the shadows, Lena and Hannah spoke her name, along with the holy bodies. Their faces, carved with the wrinkles they'd worn in life, were clean of the worries they once carried. They smiled at her. A frown flickered over her face as she turned and looked back at Valentius. Over his shoulder she saw the bucket that had such a part in her fall. A rush of fear passed through her, and leaning her head further around him, she noticed it wasn't just the bucket and water. Her body was there too. Blood outlined her shape in the flickering candlelight. Her twisted leg for once looked normal, lying straight under her dress. "I'm dead," she said, looking at Valentius. The skeleton tilted his head. "You are, Amelia. Don't be afraid, though." The music slowed, but the skeletons no longer danced. Instead, they cradled her, held her as the tremors of shock ran through her. Though how could that be, since her body lay only feet away? The holy bodies pressed close, and eventually, looking around, she understood that if they weren't afraid, then neither should she be. They'd been gone for centuries. They were important, and yet they gathered for her. "We're all important," Valentinus said. "That means you." The skeletons parted, and Lena and Hannah entered. The old ladies, the ones who'd listened to her prattle on during the many hours of cleaning the basilica, didn't look in pain or sorrow, not any more. They rushed to Amelia and took her in their arms. Unlike the holy bodies, they were still warm. "Such a silly way to die," she murmured to them. Lena clicked her tongue. "You think that makes a difference, little one? It's how you lived, not how you died." The old woman wrapped their arms around her. "Come with us," Hannah said, giving her a squeeze as they stepped over Amelia's body. "The bodies have to stay here, but you don't." The doors of the basilica melted away, and Amelia looked ahead with an uncertain smile on her face. "What's out there?" she asked, turning to give Valentinus a little wave. "Oh, you'll see," Lena said, her tone bright. "It's quite an adventure." "I like adventures," Amelia replied as the woman squeezed her hands from each side. Her last glance back towards Valentinus and his fellow skeletons was the only sadness she felt, like she was leaving friends behind. Nevertheless, the holy bodies danced on under the basilica's beautiful ceiling, the room filled with the sound of the pipes, and waited for the next soul to join them. What'd you think of that one?
That's good. It was bringing back very vivid memories of that.
Yes, I was definitely taking a lot
church.
of noises.
Yeah.
Noises.
Noises? Notes?
My throat is so dry. A lot of notes when we went to that basilica, because I was like, this is a great place to write a story about. I don't know what I'm going to write it, what it's going to be about. But I don't know, was that a horror story? I hope it was a...
I don't think it was a horror story. There wasn't... See.
Well, dancing skeletons.
Dancing skeletons. I mean, it's creepy. It's creepy. It's a ghost story.
Well, I do like creepy.
It's a ghost story.
It's definitely a ghost story.
It's definitely a ghost story, but would I call it a horror story? No. Horror, see, this is the hard part about horror.
That was actually a sweet story, now that I read it.
It's a very sweet story. See, the thing about horror stories is they can't end well.
Well, she's dead, so
Well, no. There's being dead, and then there's being dead and finding yourself in a really bad place, or there's being. It's a bit like let's see. Like, I don't consider Doctor Sleep a horror movie. It's terrifying, but the way it ends.
Well, there are ghosts in it.
There are ghosts in it. Yes, it's now Doctor Sleep is a good ghost story, but like and I think that's why Stephen King didn't care for the Kubrick version of The Shining, because it didn't have any kind of redeeming ending. It basically Kubrick just turned it into a horror movie, and that was probably Kubrick's intent. He wanted to make a horror movie. So he made a horror movie based on The Shining.
So you're saying that a ghost story doesn't necessarily have to be a horror story?
No, it does not.
Oop, watch out for that.
Yeah, I see it. It does not have to, a ghost story does not have. A ghost story does not have to be a horror story.
Let's make those the last logs we put on.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that. I think it's quite hot enough.
Trying to get the flames a little higher.
But when you see dead bodies in glass cases,
no, that's terrifying. That's terrifying.
It was a little strange.
Oh, no, it was. Ugh. And the thing was that they were putting poses, Chad. They were putting poses, and they had like you could tell they were in very expensive. Everything that Pip said, the very expensive clothes. They had jewelry on, and you're looking at this and going. And they couldn't have always been skeletons. They couldn't have always been skeletons.
Well, they were skeletons that came from Rome.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that part.
Yeah, at some stage during the
but
15th
it was just,
and 16th century,
it was just a little. It was a little unsettling that these.
From our point of view, yes.
From our point of view,
there are definitely death rituals that go on around the world that we find creepy and weird. Like there's a group, and I think it's in Indonesia, where they actually. Take the mummies of the dead out every year and kind of venerate them and trot them around the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
give them
as you do.
Give them offerings and that sort of thing.
Well, and here's some completely it's completely unrelated, but it was funny. There was they were shooting, I believe it was Spectre. They were shooting the film Spectre. That was the previous Bond film before the one No Time to Die was supposed to come out. And if you remember, Spectre opens with this very, very cool sequence. It's a parade / it's
Day of the Dead.
Celebrating the Day of the Dead. The thing was there was no celebration of the Day of the Dead that was like this. And they were like, well, let's just stage it. And they were like, yeah, but we don't celebrate the Day of the Dead with this. We don't do like dances or anything, parades. And they're like, well, yeah, but we'll just do it for the film. Well, the local town had so much fun doing it. It's now part of their daily.
Oh, and it's also good for the tourists. Let's face it.
Yeah. But that's
when's the Day of the Dead? Is it coming up?
It's not.
Is it in October or is it later?
I think it's like it's around this time. It's around the change of the seasons. But now you think it's strange, Nerd Girl. There's a little known fact, and they did remove this from. I remember that while it's kept in the musical for some reason, in the film version of Evita, there is a very key thing that is cut out from the film. At the very end of the musical Evita. They talk about how the guy who was Perón. Apparently, he went and he had Eva Perón's body dug up, and he lived with it for roughly 30 days. For roughly 30
But
days.
she'd been like they did to Lennon, right? She'd been
She was in the glass casket and everything like that.
yeah.
But yeah, they basically did that, but then he basically took her out of the casket and then lived with her for 30 days.
What did he do? Prop her up in a chair? Or?
Yeah, he did the whole Norman Bates thing. The
my
whole Norman Bates
gosh.
thing. Now, see, and that's the difference. See, that's the difference, I think, between horror and a sweet ghost story.
Well, that was definitely not something that you did in Argentina, that you dug up your dead wife and
no, you just
kept
didn't
it
do
in
that. Even if you were in charge.
But there were a lot of death rituals.
But the point I'm getting at is I don't think, and this is where horror is really rough. A horror does not necessarily have happy endings, or horror doesn't have sweet endings. Most horror movies that I remember, they don't have. The closest you get to a happy ending in a horror movie is like an Alien or Aliens, that the hero,
So are you saying that in horror movies it has to end bleakly? It has to end badly? Because I'm like,
I don't think it has to end badly, but bad things have to happen to people. And yes, something bad happened to your protagonist, but then she found. But the thing was that these ghosts all celebrated her life, and they made her feel important.
Yeah.
And she was reunited with her sisters.
Yes.
So that's kind of a sweet. That's a sweet little. It's
sweet and creepy.
Yeah.
It's like sweet and sour, but sweet and creepy.
It's more like Twilight Zone. That sounded like a really good Twilight Zone
that would have
episode.
been a good Twilight Zone episode.
And so I think it's more like, that's where it becomes more like, it's less horror. It doesn't become, it's more like a fantasy, I think, than horror. Horror, okay, if that had been horror, it would have been that
they tore her apart.
They tore her apart, yeah.
They came down and...
That the ghosts actually killed her.
Yes.
That would have made it horror, in my opinion. I was waiting for these things, things to go, and that's the thing. Horror is when things go wrong. Randy basically said yes, nerd girl, Perón, Weekend at Bernie, Evita. Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
Oh, strange they didn't put that in the musical.
But Randy's right. No, Randy's right. It was a sweet, creepy story, which makes it kind of Twilight Zone-esque.
A lot of people have said that my writing, one of my brands is creepy.
Yes, your brand is creepy.
And I like creepy. I'm not so much...
And yet I wound up out-creeping you. I wound up out-creeping you in the steampunk series.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is funny. I think you rubbed off on
I think
it.
actually the story about the serial killer and the hands and nailing that was probably the closest I've come to real horror writing in my time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part about horror...
But I've never really liked squick horror. I've never liked...
No, but see, to me, that's not horror. That's the difference. See, that's the difference between Stephen King horror and Clive Barker horror.
Yeah.
And I've read both. Stephen King is about the creep. It's about the characters. It's about the psychological. It's about the twists and turns.
I've never been I mean, I like horror movies. I like zombie movies. But I do not care for things like Saw or that sort of...
I saw one of the Saw films and I said, well, I'll never have to sit through that again.
Yeah, but they haven't
I'm not... And I think, well...
I like ghost stories.
Randy says you do creepy but not horrific.
Yes.
And I would say the difference is this: if you watch, like, say, and now what I don't like in horror movies or just horror in general is when the bad ending is kind of stuck on.
Oh, like what was the one you watched? You were like the zombie movies where they fight and fight and fight, and you're like, oh look, some of them have survived and escaped, and then they're like, no, they're all dead.
Right. Oh,
they tried to get to the island.
Like the remake of I think it was it Dawn of the Dead? That what's his face? Zack Snyder did.
Yeah.
And they basically get to the island, but they find out the island's overrun. Mm-hmm. So basically, you go through that entire film, and then it was all for nothing. I mean,
now here's my question. So there was this one which had Bilbo.
Yes.
That had Bilbo Baggins in it. Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
And it was set during a zombie apocalypse, and he and his wife and a baby were living.
No. That's not Martin Freeman. You think it's Martin Freeman, but it was just some rando.
Oh, was it?
It was some rando Australian dude.
It was It was set in Australia. There was a zombie apocalypse, and the
wife turns.
The wife turns. She bit him.
Yeah.
They know exactly how long it takes to turn. You've got 48 hours or something. So he has this baby, and he has to try and find somebody to look after his baby because he knows he's going to turn.
He knows he's going to turn.
And at the end, that has, well, not for him, but it has an uplifting ending for
Right.
he succeeds and
He does. He
spoiler
does.
alert, he
Yeah.
succeeds.
Spoiler alert, he
So
succeeds.
would you say because that has an uplifting ending, that's not horror?
No, I would say that is horror. Because bad things happen to the protagonist, but there is at least a sense of hope at the end.
Yes.
I don't think...
Some horror movies do have a sense of hope at the end.
Yes, and I'm like a perfect example, Train to Busan.
Train to Busan. Oh.
Train to Busan.
When's that coming out? When's Peninsula coming out?
Peninsula's already out.
Where are we seeing it? Why are we not seeing it?
I think it's on the streaming service. It might be on a streaming service.
God damn it,
but-
we need to see that this month.
So okay, but here's the thing. Like, and I think the problem with the tacked on bad ending of movies, I think you can kind of trace that back to John Carpenter, because in John Carpenter, when
The Thing
in Halloween, in the original Halloween,
yeah.
you know, Michael is there. He's about to kill.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and then what happens? Pleasance shoots him, and he falls 2 stories down, and then she goes, "What's the boogeyman?" He goes, "No." She says, "Was that the boogeyman?" He goes, "As a matter of fact, it was." And then he goes over to, and then they start playing the Halloween theme, and you see him, you know, his body isn't there, and you know, it just goes to different places in the town, but all you hear is the breathing of Michael Myers behind the mask, and then it stops. The last thing you see is his old house, and then it fades to black. And that type of question mark, the end question mark. I've always had issues with it, but if anybody could get away with it, it was Carpenter, because when he did it right, it was brilliant. Since earlier you mentioned The Thing.
The Thing also has a kind of a question mark,
it's
because
got-
you're like,
it's
is one
got
of them The Thing?
Yeah, but that's what makes it.
But
such
they
a-
would have died anyway, right?
But that was the beautiful thing. Did they? Because the Thing could survive. The Thing could survive in a human form. But the question is, was either one of them the Thing? And what I loved about that movie was that end kept you guessing.
Yes, that was a really
It
was a really good movie.
I still argue. I think that John
it's one of my
Carpenter's
favorite horrors, I think.
yeah, John Carpenter's John Carpenter's 2 best movies, in my opinion, were The Thing and Starman. And what I loved about Starman is that I didn't think he had that kind of a story in him, and that was such a
but that was not a horror.
No,
that was
no,
not
no.
a horror movie.
That was
an
that was
action.
That was straight up sci-fi romance. Straight up
That
sci-fi
is
romance, and it was a very sweet story.
So
from
what
the
is your
last thing.
favorite? So what is your favorite horror? If you had to pick some horror movies that you liked, oh, obviously Train to Busan,
Train to Busan, The Thing.
Shaun of the Dead.
We see Shaun of the Dead's funny because that's horror comedy,
Yeah.
and horror comedy is really hard to pull off.
And nothing,
I think it is
I
very,
would say
very hard to
nothing
pull
bad
off.
happens to him, but he has to kill his mum. So you know.
Yeah.
And his friend dies.
Can't remember the title of that movie with Martin in Australia, but it was gorgeous, creepy
think it
horror,
was something-
and ended in hopeful ways. So Randy's seen it.
Yeah. Was it something? I'm gonna have to look it up. I don't have.
So
my phone.
and Randy also commented on this. Get to the island and it's overrun. I wanted to like that movie, and it just ended in despair. No, that movie with Martin was horror, but the daughter he cared for. I mean, so like when
So a horror movie doesn't
okay,
have to.
I'll
Horror
give you-
movie does not require that it has a downer ending. It can have a.
It can have a downer ending, but if you have a downer ending, you better stick the landing, and it's hard to do with another one. I think is another perfect horror movie, and I remember hearing a critic talk about this. Was that what makes
I need to find the. Can you just pass me your phone and I'll.
yeah what makes Alien. What makes Alien?
Oh yes, Alien is a great horror
the perfect
movie.
horror movie, in my opinion. What makes Alien the perfect horror movie is that it solves the problem of the haunted house. You know,
Why don't they just run
Why don't they just
outside?
run out of the Why don't they just run out of the haunted house? Why don't they just
Where's
get
Wikipedia on here?
Oh, Wikipedia? Hang on.
Yeah.
Wikipedia's under reference.
It's gonna bug me if I don't find
Right.
the name of this.
Well, you should look under IMDb, shouldn't you?
No, I'll just look up Martin Freeman. I know
I'm
that.
telling you, Martin Freeman is. You said it was the, and then we saw a clip from the film, and you were like, "Wait, that's not Martin Freeman." I'm
Yeah, but
telling
I
you,
know
that's not-
it's weird. No.
I'm telling you, it's not him. Okay.
Okay,
fine.
what do I get
Okay.
if I get?
Yeah.
You make dinner
Go
tomorrow.
for it.
Oh,
Go
damn
for it. Go for it.
No,
Go
there
for
was
it.
definitely a movie. I'm not sure if it was a remake.
It wasn't
or
Martin
something.
Freeman. I don't. If it was a remake, that's different.
Yeah.
But like, but I think, but you see, if you end a horror movie on a bleak note, I think it's real hard to stick the landing. versus an Alien. Not only do you have, not only do you get to the end and then, you think it's done.
Cargo, that's what it was called.
Okay. But you get to the end and then you think it's done and the alien's on the pod with her.
Yeah. I've got an explanation for why we're thinking about this.
All right.
It was based on a short story. So they took the short story movie and they made it into an actual full film with Martin Freeman. Film stars Martin Freeman.
Really?
Yes.
Then what was the clip we saw?
That was from the short film.
Oh, okay. So it was a short film first, and then they made it into a feature film.
Yes.
Okay, I stand corrected then.
So we were both right.
We were both right. Right. Okay. Based on a short film. Got it.
Cargo. That's what it was called.
But the thing is, I'm one of these people that believes, and this is why I'm not a big fan of horror, of zombie horror, is because there's no hope. And it was one of the reasons why, for the longest time, I didn't play Last of Us, because I wanted to make sure that there was at least a semblance of hope at the end. And there was in the original, and I haven't reached this. I have no spoilers. I haven't reached the original yet.
I'm just going to check out Peninsula as well.
But you can see if we can find it. But when movies end bleakly, I don't think they have to necessarily end bleakly, but they should end with some. I do think there should be some consequences, or at least some fallout based on the character's journey, if that makes sense. Like, for example, there was oh god, it was a terrible film, but it was but when it what
it was released in August.
Yeah, I told you it was out.
That's a strange month to release it, but okay.
Well, it's still considered a foreign film. The question is it out?
I presume it's out.
I mean, where can we find it? But what I was saying was that, like there was a terrible movie, going back to your earlier story. There was a movie called, I think it was called Grave Encounters, and it was a found footage. It was a found footage movie and it was loosely based off of Ghost Adventurers. And you wanted to see things go bad for these douchebags.
Yeah,
And it was the found footage Ghost Adventures film that just where everything went to hell in a handbasket. And the way that one ended,
they got trapped in the hospital.
They got trapped in a haunted hospital, and the way that one ended was the host, who had been such a huge douchebag, basically the ghost caught up with him, and they lobotomized him. And it was basically.
Didn't he do that and the others escaped?
No, he was the sole survivor. And. So
he didn't even have a redemption arc, like, no, I'm going to sacrifice myself? No,
there was no redemption arc, but the thing is, in that film, it kind of got away with it because all the characters in that film were absolutely reprehensible.
You were like,
you were
on the side of the ghosts.
I want all of them to die in a horrible trash fire, and they did. When I think of horror movies that have at least moments of hope, there's Alien, there's Train to Busan, which has a really lovely ending. Mm-hmm. It has a lovely ending. I'm trying to. There's the. Now Wes Anderson, I think it was Wes. No, it was W.S. It's W.S. Anderson. I think that's who directed it. Hang on a minute. Hey Siri. Who directed Event Horizon?
Event Horizon was
Paul W.S. Anderson. Right. So it was Paul W.S. Anderson. Now, spoiler alert, that ends with the hero making it to the end, but then when she gets rescued, the first thing she sees is disfigured Sam Neill. And it's not pretty. That's never a good thing to see. Even though Sam Neill's a beautiful man, he was not beautiful at the end of Event Horizon. But I mean that's the thing about horror. Horror is tricky because you want there to, some people want a redemption arc like Stephen King. Stephen King wanted the character of Jack Torrance to have a redemption arc, like he did in his book.
But he didn't.
But he didn't get it in the film from Stanley Kubrick, which made the job of the director of Doctor Sleep so tough, because he basically had to
balance both the book ending and the movie ending.
He had to handle both the book and the movie, and I think he did a great job.
Well, the problem was at the end of the movie, the Overlook Hotel is still standing. At the end of the book,
it's destroyed.
So because Stephen King wrote the
Spoiler
sequel...
alert coming up.
Because Stephen King wrote the sequel to his book, he started from the point of, well, the Overlook Hotel is destroyed.
It's gone.
So the bad guys have actually set up camp
at the site
of the former Overlook Hotel.
Right.
So it was an extraordinary thing to have to do to balance both.
But you know what?
I think he did a good job. I enjoyed that
I thought he did
movie.
a great job. We highly recommend seeing.
Oh my gosh!
Dr. Sleep.
And the little girl. Oh, I don't know who the actress.
Oh, the young
yeah,
actress.
But Ewan McGregor was really good.
Well, Ewan McGregor was Ewan McGregor, so there's that.
Ewan McGregor all over that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, but again, the thing is, that's the difference between Stephen King horror versus Clive Barker horror. Clive Barker horror is totally about the squick factor.
Thank God that wasn't the same. I was about to say, if that's the same truck.
No, I would have been worried. But I mean, and that's what I think is it's a hard line to cross. And horror is, I mean, I've written horror that's had bleak endings. I guess
you read one tonight.
I read, and I have a. Yeah, but was it? They were going to be a family again, and that's where
fucking undead family.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Here's a perfect example of horror, of sci-fi horror, with a bleak ending. The classic Twilight Zone episode 2. Well,
that's my book.
The classic Twilight episode To Serve Man. I mean, it's all going along. There's a little bit of paranoia involved. You're moving along, and then at the very end, when he's all excited about getting on that spaceship and visiting the planet, hey, we figured it out. To Serve Man. It's a cookbook, and that ending. There's a reason why that ending resonates. Because not only does he realize at the end, oh shit, it's a cookbook, but then the global, because we now blindly trust these aliens who are now taking care of us, and they've solved the food.
Cows.
We're basically cattle, and I mean, wow.
We are very tasty.
But what a fantastic. I mean, that's like one of the greatest moments of horror ever. And it's been parodied so many times. To Serve Man, it's a cookbook. It's great.
Well, I think if I like my horror, I like my ghost stories and I like my zombies. Those are my favorite brands of horror.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to horror, when it comes to writing horror, and I can't wait to talk about this when we have Phil here. I think the difference is, like, fantasy is about the adventure. It's about the adventure and the excitement and
magic
and the magic of the moment. Horror, the difference between fantasy and horror is that horror, it's about the fantasy, it's about the magic, it's about the moment, but then things go wrong and they continue to spiral out of control. And I think that's what makes really good horror.
It's also what you're trying to get the reader or the watcher to feel.
Right.
So in fantasy, you're trying to draw them a big picture of a world.
Right.
It's full of magic and wonder and excitement.
Yeah.
Right.
There's darkness in it, but
there can be darkness in it.
But you can stand.
But it is magic, and with horror, you are trying to engender an actual sense of fear.
Yeah.
In somebody.
And that's the heart. I think that's why I admire. Because when horror is done well,
keep you awake at night.
It should keep you awake at night. I mean,
I loved Phil's Harvey.
Harvey was so good. Harvey. I mean, when it comes to Phil's work, you've got. Oh, by the way, that if you're curious about it, you really should check out his stream, because he's very on brand with his stream.
He does a lot of horror.
He does a lot of horror-based. He does a lot of horror-based video games. Wow, if I could just type though. Whoa. Oh, Phil is terrifying. Phil can be so terrifying.
Well, Phil is kind of like Stephen King in that he has done science fiction horror, but he generally does things like things in this world, that can be terrifying.
Yeah. He's so he did. There was one.
Harvey's
he did,
a small town.
Harvey's
in
a small
Virginia.
town just outside of Virginia, and he did some very Stephen King-esque, but it wasn't like trying to knock off Stephen King.
No,
He was
not
actually,
knocking off, but similar in the themes.
Yeah. And he did
Because
that
Clive
very
Barker
well.
is Clive Barker, Stephen King is Stephen King, but they
Right.
both write horror.
Right, but the difference is, I think Clive Barker is more. See, the thing is,
He's more the body horror, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like, you don't remember. I would say, I would dare say, Clive Barker is the Dan Brown of horror, in that you remember things that happen in his books or happens in his stories, but you don't remember any of the characters.
Yeah, the
Whereas
characters
with
are kind of
Stephen-
secondary.
Yeah, whereas with Stephen King,
It's all about
you
the
remember
characters.
Danny Torrance, you remember Christine, you remember, that there are things about the characters that resonate with you, that you connect with.
I think one of the things he does really well is that he makes characters that even when they do bad things, you understand them. You know what I mean? Like in Pet Sematary,
Yeah,
he's like, well, the dad character, I mean, yeah, he shouldn't have done that sort of thing, but you're like,
it's his kid.
I understand why.
Yeah,
He's got an
yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
Even with Jack Torrance. Was it Jack Torrance?
Torrance.
Yeah.
Jack Torrance, yeah.
Even with him, you're like, I can see he's an alcoholic and he's struggling with alcoholism, and that's an understandable thing that, if you have...
It's something King's struggled with.
Yeah. I mean, and he puts a lot of his own stuff in there, like,
Oh, yeah.
like
Oh,
you
yeah.
all do.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the story he wrote, but there was one... Remember when he got hit by a car?
Yeah, I remember that,
And then he, of course, did Misery,
Misery.
which was
Yep.
definitely a writer's
A writer's,
horror story.
writer's complete nightmare. But again, that's the thing too, is that when you look at some of the games that Phil plays, there's another difference. Like when people say, "Oh yeah, Doom Eternal," which is one of the games that Phil played, that's a horror game. It's like, well, it's there are some scary things about it, but do I think it's a horror game? No, I think it's more like action adventure. It's more of the squick factor. Now, when I say the squick factor, I would say that's the difference between like a horror movie, like say. Even though people say it's more like a thriller, I say no, it's a horror movie because it's absolutely terrifying, is the movie Psycho. The Hitchcock classic Psycho.
It's definitely a horror movie.
Yeah. Compare that to one of the Saw films. And the horror in the Saw films comes from all the gross...
That's the body terror.
It's the
though.
body terror, yeah. It's basically the stuff you see in Hellraiser, and then Clive Barker just basically ramps up in later Hellraisers. But when you look at it's like a perfect example of really good horror, again, not just from Psycho, but going back to the one we talked about earlier, Train to Busan. I mean, I think one of the most terrifying moments of that film is when they reach one of the stations.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they all get off the train.
And they're all going down the
and
escalator.
they're slowly going down
And
the
they're like,
escalator.
"Oh, we're all
they're like,
good."
"Oh, hey, look, they're the people." And then they turn around, they're all
Oh,
infected.
the military people, right?
And the military
They see
people,
the bottom of their feet.
They go, "Oh, okay, the military's here," and they're basically keeping order. Then we should be good. And then they all turn around, and then they have to run up the down-going escalator. And that's what makes horror good. It's when you get lulled in that, and it happens all the time in The Last of Us. You get lulled into this sense of security.
We're okay. I've got this sorted.
Yeah, and then
Bang, no, you don't.
Steve has even said, Steve Saylor, that's Steve the Blind Gamer Sailor. He has even said that he finds it funny watching me play The Last of Us, because now anytime I open a door, instead of me just walking into one of the rooms or shining my flashlight,
Yeah.
I
Open the door and expect something.
I open the door and I immediately pull back on my joystick and I get my gun into the ready. I immediately do that now, and Steve's like, "This game has really made you paranoid, it hasn't?" I'm like,
Well,
you have
it's
no
kind of
idea.
put you into that apocalyptic nightmare kind of situation where
Yeah.
you're like, you expect something bad to happen.
But I truly think the hardest part about horror is trying to write something that scares you, the reader. You all in chat, for example. I mean, we don't know what scares you. We know what we can write that scares us, and we can try to make it scary enough that it will scare you. But people could read our horror and go, that was nothing. I mean, that last story, like I said, I don't think the last story was... It was less horror, more like a Twilight Zone. I still thought it was a great ghost story, especially told by the but you know.
Yeah, not all ghost stories are, wrecked with horror.
I
think I like ghost stories because they're creepy.
Yeah. Ghost stories, whether they are straight up horror or if they're just or if they're like Pip's last one, they're just fun to they're just fun to delve into, and they're a lot of fun to do by the fire, I think. Nerd Girl just said, I just discovered Grady Hendrix, his book Horror Store. Oh, furniture store is okay. Oh, that's right, horror store. I heard about this. It was a great book for me to dip my toe back into horror. He has a sense of humor along with the scare. Yeah, it's basically a horror. It's like a zombie horror thing set in an IKEA. Or there's something. It's some kind of hook where the furniture is cursed, or it's a furniture store in the. Oh yeah, the furniture store in book is a riff on IKEA. The book actually looks like an IKEA catalog.
That's hilarious.
That's
well, you know what? You and I have been in an IKEA store and we were like, what happens if we go off the path, or we can't get... What happens if the path just keeps going? You know, the little path that winds you through...
Well, somebody actually did that. I want to say somebody actually did that, where they actually went to the IKEA and they changed. They futzed around with the gobos.
You are never getting off this.
And they actually made the gobos. You know the gobos that shine the light and said the artwork. Apparently, the guy snuck in there, or not. He was waiting till there was no people around. Then he actually got his friends to lift him up, and he would turn the gobo around, and people were literally walking in circles for hours, not realizing they were still in the same spot. They're like, we're following the arrows. Why aren't we going anywhere?
And that's how they died. They just they never got anywhere to eat.
And they died of dysentery. Okay.
They died of dysentery
They
on the
died
IKEA trail.
on the IKEA trail. Yeah.
I think the fire is dying, so we probably should.
We are going to wrap up, and we're just going to go on ahead. Oh yes, Bucket, we're wrapping up. Sorry, yes, Bucket, but look.
You can go back and watch it. You
can go watch it in replay. But the other thing, too, is that this will not be the last time we do this. We will be doing this again in October. We're going to give it a little...
We still have plenty of wood.
Yeah, we got plenty of wood. But we are also going to be doing this again because we know that we can do it now. We wanted to try it out, see what it was like, because one of the problems we had was that we weren't sure how to light since we were reading from books. Since we were reading from books and not having an iPad in front of us, we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to read the books? Could we get the fire light enough to read the books by?
I don't think
not quite. So, we think we got it to a rhythm right now. We think we got it. We think we got it down now. So the next time we do, oh, look at that. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Can you tell me?
Turn the camera around.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the camera around.
And I'll tell you when I can see the moon.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. Keep going.
Oops.
Turn around.
Wait a minute. Almost there. Almost there, Chad.
Hang on for the darkness. It'll be worth it, I promise you. Oh, it's just going behind the cloud. You're not moving faster. This is like the time that the Challenger moved.
Yeah, the Challenger.
Oh, you can't see it. It just looks like a smudge.
Can you not even see the cloud that is behind?
You can sort of vaguely see the cloud.
Well, then I guess we can talk a bit before.
Well, now you'll be completely in the dark. It's just like a little smudge. It was nice before the cloud moved over it.
Damn it.
It was bright.
It's still pretty bright. Can you not see it?
It is bright, but no. It just looks like
Wait. Clouds are coming.
Oh.
Do you see it?
There's do you see the moon, people?
Do you see it?
Do you see? Yes, I can see it. Up, down a bit. There, right there.
There we go. There we go.
Oh yeah, it is bright, isn't it? It's not big because it's a.
And now let me see if I can. Let me see if I can.
If I was a werewolf, I would totally be.
Ahoo! Werewolves of London. Ahoo!
Werewolves of Virginia.
Dun, dun, dun,
It's very atmospheric.
Dun, 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 dun. Let me see if I can zoom in on it a little bit.
I love the clouds.
No, I cannot. I don't think I cannot. I cannot zoom in on that, unfortunately. All right, so that's good. That's good. Unless
you can't get in on it.
Hang on. I want to see if we can end strong with a little.
Oh yeah, it's now completely out. It looks great.
Nope. Pip opened up too many things.
I haven't opened up too many things. I've got nothing
No,
on.
no, no. I couldn't go into the history.
Oh.
I couldn't go into the history. But give me a second, chat. I might be able to make this still happen.
Look at the... These clouds are moving quite fast, actually.
Yeah, they
It's
are.
about to go behind this cloud,
on,
and there's a
hang on.
reasonable amount of cloud there.
I love the commentary on this.
Yep, it's gone. It's gone.
Where's Logitech?
Do.
There's Log.
Where's it coming? Is it going to pop out again?
Where's Logitech? Epson. Okay.
I swear that cloud just stopped. It was like, no moon for you. Oh, no. Oh, that's... Oh, when it, like, pops out half out of the moon, out of the
I know,
clouds.
right? I know, right?
Yeah.
How about this?
Oh,
One
no,
more-
it's out again. Wow, it is bright. It is bright. And now it's perfectly framed by the clouds. And you can actually see the...
All right, we're just gonna have to take it as is.
Look, you can see... Oh,
Yep.
it's bright, but it's like a little penny.
I would
right
love.
over
I would
there.
love to. I would love to be able to zoom in on this, but apparently the camera controls on Macs can get real twitchy. That's all I can tell you. They can get
And
real
not in
twitchy.
a good way, Twitch.
Not in a good way.
Well, we should probably pack it in anyway. The moon is going to do its thing.
Camera
Oh,
uploads.
there it is again. Oh, that would be really nice if we had a...
I would love to be able to zoom in on there for you, but
it'd be
unfortunately,
really
I don't
nice
think it's
if
going to
we
happen.
had a telescope. Because it's so bright, you can see all the mountains and seas and things.
Yeah, but anyway, so that'll be nice. This will be a nice way to end it. Then I guess we'll just enjoy
The
the
gibberish moon.
gibberish moon. Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I just
No,
heard them say it.
but I was gonna say, so we're definitely doing this again. We will definitely be doing this again for the for Halloween. This has been an absolute blast to do. Let's go ahead. Let's get some music going here.
Yes, while we wait for the moon. Jeez.
Perfect chat. Perfect chat. We're just gonna let AutoHost do his thing tonight. But what we're gonna do is we're definitely gonna do this again. We will let you know. We will let you know when we'll do it again, and hopefully the next time we do it, we will be doing it with Phil Rossi. We're also
Hopefully
going
there are
to
less clouds maybe in the sky.
yeah,
That
we're
would be
going
nice.
to we'll do the same thing as we did before. We will do some short stories from different sources. We'll also do maybe some Poe. We'll maybe do maybe some readings from Frankenstein.
Ooh.
But yeah, when we do it with Phil Rossi though, we will definitely be doing this guaranteed on a Saturday night. So be ready for that.
Here
Okay.
it comes again. It's coming out now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're just going to end on that. Thank you, everybody. Hope you had a great time with us. You guys have a good night. Love you all.
Good night.
And sleep tight.
Good time to finish it. Full moon.